Sneaking into the scenes at the Southern Temple Alliance in Odentown, there was a selection process going on in the hall of the Knight Youths. A sturdy young master was carrying out the assessment exam of the newly trained knights to upgrade them to a higher level of training. The participants were asked about their incentives, which compelled them to become knights, to which many of them replied similarly. They said that they wanted to guard the honor of the temple, their loved ones, and the whole of mankind. The next question was about the 10 superior qualities native to knights. The crowd of participants recited the answer altogether. As per their answer, the 10 qualities were modesty, honesty, pity, bravery, fairness, sacrifice, honor, dedication, love, and justice. Up till now, it was just a brainstorming quiz. The actual exam was a physical test, which was yet to be conducted. The master called all the participants to form a queue and explained the rules to them. Achieving a spiritual power score higher than 10 was imperative to pass the exam. Any student who scored below the passing limit was unqualified to continue further training. The test basically involved forcefully smashing onto a force measuring device to assess the participant's strength. The first in the queue was Zhang Hui. He was called up on the stage to take part in the test. Surprisingly, he scored a spiritual power level of 13. The crowd applauded for him and he was officially passed on to the next level of training. Next in line was an innocent-looking boy named Long Hao Chen. As he walked up onto the stage, he warmed up his muscles to give the best performance. He picked up the hammer and plunged it forcefully onto the wooden meter. Though his attempt was fabulous, the meter reading unfortunately couldn't cross the mark of 10. The master grinned at him and announced his failure. He was instructed to pack up for leaving as he was not allowed to stay in for further training. He couldn't bear the torment of failing the test. His innocent eyes sparkled with tears, and he had a bizarre expression of surprise on his face. However, that courageous little boy didn't give up. Instead, stood firm in front of the master and begged for another chance. He replied that it was unfair for the other participants if he granted him a second chance. Chen wasn't ready to admit his defeat. He persistently stared into the instructor's eyes, asking for a chance. The instructor was staggered to see a strange depiction in his eyes. An intense sensation of determination was being portrayed by his expressions. He had one of the big 10 qualities of the knights outpouring from his eyes. It was unusual even for the best of the knights to attain such a high level of a certain quality that it became visible externally, but that kid was a different breed. A moment later, Chen retreated his steps towards the queue. He paused in front of his mates and dropped to the ground onto his knees to beg them for another chance. If they gave their consent, then the instructor would be bound to give him a second chance. The students gave their decision in Chen's favor. They said that they had no issue if he got 2 chances because he was a hard-working boy. The instructor was somewhat persuaded too. Although Chen's luck didn't abide him during the test, he had been an exceptional student throughout the past year of training. The master was an eyewitness to his tough grind. Taking into consideration his previous determination, he allowed him a second chance. Chen expressed his gratitude to his fellows and the master for entrusting him. The instructor said that the second chance would be granted on the condition of winning a duel with Zhang. He called Zhang and instructed him to use his full strength in the fight. Otherwise, he would be declared failed too.
Do you want to know the name of this manga, along with all the manga names of the recaps we did in our channel? How about also the chapter numbers our recaps end? You can simply ask the names in our Discord community for free or become a donor to get them all in one place. You can either be a donor in Patreon or be a member in our YouTube channel. Just scan this QR code or go to the link in the description to become a donor. Moreover, becoming a donor automatically makes you a VIP member of our Discord server with over tens of thousands of members.
Now it was Zhang and Chen in the battleground, all geared up to begin with the round. As Chen was junior to Zhang, he requested him to be easy, but that wicked senior said that he wouldn't show mercy. The fight began with Zhang's attack. He swooshed his sword at his opponent with all his strength, but Chen was skillful enough to counteract it efficiently. He proceeded with the second attack, but Chen still managed to escape it. The instructor squinted his eyes due to the tension going on in his mind. He was curious about the final results. The third attack was cleverly initiated by Chen instead of Zhang. He poked his sword's blunt end forcefully into the opponent's stomach and knocked him over right away. Zhang screamed at the top of his throat in pain. He was badly defeated by a boy who couldn't even surpass level 10 of the spiritual power. The instructor announced the conclusion of the duel as Zhang had lost his balance. After declaring Chen the winner, he invited him over for a second chance. Chen once again made his way to the assessment machine with immense motivation. He was determined to accomplish the task at any cost. Gathering all his strength at the tip of the hammer, he banged it on the weight scale forcefully. The attempt cost him his entire energy and stamina. By virtue of his good luck, the scale reading had crossed the mark of 10 and reached up to the 11th level. Finally, after tons of hard work, he was upgraded to the next level of training. His excitement was boundless at that point. The instructor's mind was blown away by Chen's terrific performance. In his first attempt, he was already using all his strength but couldn't surpass level 10. However, in the next attempt, just a few minutes later, he increased his spiritual power to such a great extent that he crossed level 11. It was highly unexpected of a young and apparently weak participant like him. Moving on to the other participants, he summarized the exam and compiled the results. The ones who failed were instructed to quit the practice, and those who passed were handed over to new instructors for further training. The class was disbanded, but Chen was ordered to stay back by the instructor. He had no idea why he was told to stay back. As the hall emptied, the instructor conversed with him about the duel. He was curious why he had cleverly tricked Jiang during the fight to win, rather than using his strength to defeat him. Chen said that his strength wasn't sufficient to sustain him against Jiang, so he opted to find his weak point. Because the instructor had taught him that the strongest part of the sword was its tip, he used the tip of the sword to attack Jiang's hip. He had sensed earlier that his core was at the hip, thus attacking the core would make him lose balance and trip over. It was definitely a genius move by Chen, and due to this, he overcame his fear of weakness. While he was explaining his strategy, the master was befuddled. It was impossible to carry out such a huge plan simply under observation. He was astounded, as he had not taught that advanced move to any of his students. But still, Chen was able to carry it out flawlessly. It was no less than an absolute miracle. There was nothing more to ask from Chen, so he ordered him to leave. All the students were given their special Pei-Yuan liquid of the week, but because Chen was sent home late, his liquid wasn't given to him. The instructor asked him to fetch the liquid himself. As he left, the instructor was caught in deep thoughts related to his extraordinariness. That kid was immensely hardworking, talented, and kind. All those qualities fitted perfectly for his job. He could grow into an absolutely competent knight in the future. He went to meet his fellow senior instructor. He told him about how that kid had found his opponent's weak point merely with a few seconds of observation. He was a big shot from Haoyue City's elite group of knights. The senior said that it wasn't highly supernatural to perform like that. It wasn't a result of ordinary observation. Instead, it could be explained by his abnormally high spiritual power. Coming to Chen's side of the story, he was wandering happily in the fields because of the Pai-Wen liquid which he just brought with him. He shared special sentiments with that liquid. He used to give that liquid to his mom, who would regain health instantly after consuming it. Ever since he was a kid, his mom had been telling him that men don't beg. Unfortunately, the disgraceful failure he was about to face that day compelled him to beg in front of his master. Passing the exam was imperative for him because he had to obtain that divine liquid for his mom. Only that liquid could heal his mother's continuously deteriorating health. Thus he had to get it by hook or by crook because he didn't want to lose his mother. The incentive to help his mom made him take that big step of begging. The Pai-Wen liquid was a specialized medicine exclusively formulated for children aged below 15 in order to enhance their abilities as practicing knights. Every participant of the temple was given the liquid once a week, while all the other children consumed it to become stronger and attain a higher spiritual score. Chen used to give his potion to his mother to cure her illness. That was the reason behind his lower strength as compared to his fellows. He passed the qualification exam and attained a spiritual level higher than 10 based on hard work and efficient practice throughout the previous year of training. It was highly shocking for him to attain that success without consuming even a single drop of special medicine. On his way back home, he stopped near a tree where a few herbs were planted and began plucking some leaves. Every time he took the Pai-Yuan liquid home, he would mix it with a bunch of leaves to conceal its taste. He didn't want his mother to know that the medicine, which was meant to increase his strength, was being utilized for her treatment. It was a secret which he had been keeping for years. After collecting a few leaves, he sat down to grind them into the liquid. Not even a moment might have passed since he began his work when he heard a loud shriek. Looking around, he spotted a girl lying on the ground a few meters ahead of him. It appeared as if she met with an accident. He rushed towards her in order to offer help. The girl was all bruised on her arms and elbows. She might have been badly hurt. He asked her the issue, but she kept on ogling into his eyes rather than replying. There was a pin-drop silence between the two. Chen lent her an arm for support so that she could sit up. Sitting up, she began writing some words on the sand with her finger. The completed sentence said that she couldn't speak due to some disorder, and a few bad guys were chasing her who would be catching up any moment. After explaining her trouble, she asked Chen to help her but referred to him as a sister. She mistook him for a girl. It was pretty natural for anyone to mess up his gender because of his long, lustrous black hair and innocent facial expression. He cleared her confusion and told her that he was a boy. Knowing that the girl was in trouble, he picked her up in his arms and carried her away to a safe spot. Out of the blue, he remembered that the medicinal potion he was preparing with those leaves was left behind. It was a highly valuable treasure that couldn't be left, so he decided to stay with the girl at the same spot where he was formulating the medicine. When he put her back on the ground, she began writing another message, which said that he should go back and protect his life because the guys could sense her scent and would arrive soon. She insisted him to leave, but Chen refused. He said that he was a brave man and would go to any extent to protect her. As far as the scent was concerned, he plucked a few strongly smelling leaves and rubbed them on the girl's hands and his own. Now her scent wouldn't be recognizable anymore. All of a sudden, a few thumping footsteps approached them. Chen realized that the goons might be somewhere close to them, so he hid himself and the girl behind a bush. A while later, a few strangely dressed men appeared in front of the bush. Their facial appearance couldn't be assessed because they were wearing masks. They stopped right in front of them and started running around aimlessly because the scent couldn't be tracked beyond that point. One of the goons said that the girl might have found some bastard to help her, so they should go back rather than wander around. The other one presented his opinion that they should wait right there, because it had already taken them a lot of effort to get there. Thus, there was no point in retreating. Amongst the masked men in black was a man wearing a majestic blue attire. He seemed to be their master. The master suddenly paused, and a gleaming luminosity radiated from his core, which linearly struck his fellow goons. Just a moment later, the goons in black disappeared as if they were never there. What on earth did he just do? When everyone else disappeared and he was left alone, he called the girl to come out. It meant that he knew she was hiding somewhere there. When he called her, the girl leaped out of Chen's arms and tried to exit the bush. However, she was stopped just in time by Chen, who convinced her to stay back while he went up and dealt with the man. He courageously stood in front of the strange man and called him for a fight. The moment he was about to initiate his attack, the girl came out and jumped right in front of Chen to protect him. She gestured that the man should fight with her instead of Chen as he had nothing to do with the matter. She was definitely a brave girl. Now it was the man versus the small girl. She furiously looked into his eyes as if she was about to put up a serious show and unsheathed her sword. However, the angry young man didn't lend her even a single moment to attack and picked her up into his arms to carry her away with him. That sight couldn't be endured by Chen. He hopped onto the battlefield and swooshed his small sword towards him. Still, since the man was much stronger and older than him, he counteracted the attack very easily and plunged him away onto the ground. Dusty fumes swirled around him when he fell. The blow was so impactful for him that he blacked out right there on the spot. The girl started shouting and babbling as a gesture to the man that he should not hurt Chen in any way, to which he replied that he had no intention to do so either. He put the girl down and went over to Chen. He was awestruck by his spectacular talent. Despite being immensely talented, his bones were weak. The man assessed that both his personality and outstanding skills would make him a good knight. Why was he assessing his future? Was he related to the Knight Recruitment Institute? Was he an intelligence officer who took a mock practical exam to assess Chen's abilities? It was pretty plausible because he told the girl that Chen already possessed 4 of the 10 big qualities of a knight. Those were pity, bravery, perseverance, and sacrifice. All those qualities were engraved into his personality at such a young age. He could become an outstanding knight who protected others and set goals for himself that were out of his own reach too. He ought to be rewarded for his bravery. The man casted a spell, and a cloud of divine aura appeared in front of his chest. He directed the fume towards Chen's chest in order to deliver the wellness of the divine energy to him. Chen's body enlightened up as the energy made its way into his veins. It was the spirit force that was infused into his body, which would help him sort out 12 standards. After he had ignited the impurity standard, his potential would have improved by several levels. As he was done with transfusing into him the spirit force, he ordered the girl to leave too, as her training was over. The girl, Kai seemed to be a part of his project too. It all made sense that it might be a high-level plan to evaluate Chen's personality. Despite being a part of his plan, Kai didn't want to leave Chen in that state. She stared at him with affection. After thinking of ways to maintain her connection with him, she took off her ring from her finger and placed it on Chen's index finger. That ring would serve as an ultimate connection between the two of them. Because her master was calling her to leave, she couldn't spend much time with Chen. Before leaving, she placed the green leaves that he had plucked to make medicine by his side so that he would find them just as he woke up. That was all about their encounter. Kai and her master left, and Chen was all alone, lying down in the middle of the forest. A while later, he regained his senses and gradually opened his eyes. The first thing that caught his attention was the leaves. He was glad that his treasure was safe. The next thing he noticed was the ring on his finger. Seeing the ring made him realize that the events that he met before being blacked out were definitely a reality rather than a dream. He looked around in search of Kai and the master, but couldn't find any of them. Perhaps they might have dealt with her in their own way. Letting bygones be bygones, he ignored the matter because he was already getting late for home. His mother would be waiting for him because he had to make soup with her. He got up, picked up his sword, and left for home. By the time he got done with the chores at home, the day had ended already. As the next day dawned, He was thrilled to visit the temple because he was to train with the new master. He rushed to the temple early and began practicing as a warm-up before his first class. Previously, his highest spiritual score level was 11, so he had to take it higher than that. Surprisingly, just within a few attempts, the scale reading went up to level 25th. It was unbelievably spectacular. The immense force he had exerted on the machine caused his sword to crack up into pieces. It definitely was a mind-blowing achievement. He was having a hard time believing that he had actually done it, but the broken sword was proof of it. The instructor had told them that the highest level of spiritual power was 20, but he had reached level 25. While he was busy analyzing his success, a young man appeared from the back door of the temple and interrupted him. He was the same man whom he had met yesterday, the master of the goons, but because Chen was blacked out when he uncovered his face, he couldn't recognize him. His name was Xing Yu, and he was Chen's new instructor since he had passed the exam and was promoted to the next level of training. It meant that the assumption of him trying to assess Chen's abilities was a verity. He had plotted the previous day's situation to check out his suitability for the profession of a knight. However, since Chen was befogged of the whole incident, he told the man that he had not seen him ever before and was reluctant to acknowledge him as his master. To clear his objections, Master Yu began narrating his history so that he could believe that he was actually an instructor who had access to every participant's history. When he still saw an expression of puzzlement on Chen's face, he said that they would wait for Mr. Ba-er-Jia, his previous instructor, so that he could explain the reality to him. It might not have been just a moment when Mr. Ba arrived and greeted Yu with respect. He told Chen that Master Yu was a knight from Haoyue City's elite group of knights, and he would be their instructor for the next 3 years. Chen was surprised to know that he was a real knight. Though he wasn't clear on the difference between a standard knight and a real knight, he was assured of the fact that he was his master and he had to obey him. When the matter was resolved, Yu grasped Chen's hand and took him to the new practice hall. On their way, Chen stared at him with confusion and nervousness. Though he felt strange while going with him, there was an element of safety and affection somewhere in the anxiety. The new master's hands were very warm and cozy, and his majestic attitude indicated that he was a kind-hearted man. Chen hesitantly broke the ice by asking him why they had to leave the present training hall, to which he replied that it wasn't suitable for them. As soon as they stepped out of the temple, the warmth that radiated from Yu's hands vanished because of the swift wind that blew past them. They were rushing through the pathways of Odin Mountain at the speed of light as they were about to take off on a flying journey. Chen was petrified to witness that he was taking him through the path that was rumored to be a habitat of evil monsters. Nevertheless, his fear reduced when they reached their destination, and Master Yu slowed down with his pace. It was quite a quick journey. The destination was a small, peaceful town at the other end of Odin Mountain. There were a few cottages, into one of which they entered. Perhaps it was Yu's home. It was a small building with a few basic furniture items inside. Yu asked Chen to sit at the table with him as he had an important issue to discuss with him. After making him feel at home, he asked him about his exceptionally high spiritual power, which rose within just a single day. When Chen said that he had no idea about it, he asked him about the incident from the previous day. His question made Chen uneasy, but because he was his master, he had to be honest with him. He narrated to him the whole story of that girl who couldn't speak and how he tried to save her. As he finished the tale, he asked Master Yu if that girl might be in some trouble, to which he replied that she might be with that mysterious man who could be classified as an assassin knight. Yu noticed the ring on his finger, which Kai had given him as a token of friendship. It was a space ring. Chen was lucky to have that ring because it was very costly. However, Chen wasn't interested in the ring at that moment because he was curious about the assassin knights. He wondered how the mysterious man wiped away all the bad guys with just a single command. Noticing his dire inquisitiveness, Yu explained the matter to him. Because that man had killed the bad goons, he was classified as an assassin knight. They were capable of wiping out all the remains of a person within a split second. Their spiritual powers were very high because they stored the energy in a container. He also told Chen that the mysterious man had infused into him a spiritual force to sort out 12 standards. He ignited that power, which was the reason behind his exceptionally high strength. The favor wasn't a small one, and he instructed Chen to return the favor if he ever got a chance in the future. Everything aside, Chen's mind was stuck in the spiritual energy container. He thought it was a stream of white light, but Yu said that it was merely a container that could acquire any shape and color. However, he went on to say that Chen wasn't yet at the point of learning about the container. He still had a long way to reach that level. Moreover, those who owned a spiritual container weren't necessarily powerful, but it was a prerequisite to stand at the summit. With that, he ended the discussion on that topic. He told him that a single holiday would be given each week in which he could visit home, and the rest of his days would be spent in training. Settling all the basic issues, Chen asked about the Pi Yuan liquid. It was the most necessary thing which he required in any circumstance. Yu said that he would give him the liquid every week. If he performed well enough, he even promised to give him more varieties of divine herbs. However, if he didn't perform up to the mark, then Yu threatened to chase him off the mountain. Now Chen had a reason to give his 100% into his work. For his mother's sake, he promised to please his master with his training. As far as the daily schedule was concerned, Yu said that he would teach Chen something new every morning, and the knowledge would be practiced in the afternoon and at night. He issued a serious warning of snatching away his whole week's liquid if he tried to dodge the schedule. After a short introduction to what his life in the next 3 years would look like, Master Yu began an interrogation session to analyze his knowledge about the temples. Chen had been a bright student throughout his past training. He had a basic insight into the history of the temples and thus began pouring out his knowledge immediately. The Temple Alliance consisted of 6 temples, namely the Knight Temple, the War Temple, the Assassin Temple, the Wizard Temple, the Pastor Temple, and the Spirit Temple. They protected mankind's last few territories in conjunction with each other. Though he knew that the temples protected humans, he had no idea about the reason for which protection was required. Master Yu began explaining the detailed history of mankind and temples. 13,000 years ago, humans gained control of the Trinity mainland and evolved from prehistoric times. After the mainland flourished, many countries popped up under its rule, letting mankind dominate it. Initially, the Trinity mainland was at peace, but as more and more countries emerged onto the map, a war broke out among them. Under the influence of horrific wars, there were only 3 countries left on the mainland. Those 3 countries tried their best to evolve with time, making mankind the fastest developing species ever. Up to 7,000 years after that, mankind enjoyed its glorious period. Everything was going well until 6,000 years ago, when the glory of mankind was destroyed by magic. When the 9 planets aligned, something resembling a giant crack was visible in the sky directly above the eastern side of the mainland. From the crack descended 72 demon pillars, which distributed plague and evilness to the mainland. For the first 100 days after the crack emerged, the pillars released a weird and dangerous gas. Whatever species came in contact with it would transform into an inferno being. The inferno beings obeyed every commandment passed on by the demon pillars. They became a part of the demon army. Within a span of just 100 days, the demons had formed a huge army of millions of infernos. Fortunately, the gas lasted only for 100 days. If it persisted even after that, mankind would have gone extinct in no time. Within the demon pillars was a full-fledged squadron of demons. Each squadron was ranked according to their skills. They utilized the newly formed army of infernos and used devastating attacks against mankind. Ever since they landed, human beings had entered a dark era, which persisted till the present day. In those 6,000 years of devastation, the 3 countries had been demolished. Everything gained by the humans in the glory period was crippled by the demons. Even their defense system was totally destroyed. It wasn't till 3,000 years ago, when the 6 Temple Alliance was formed, that finally, the humans took a firm step for their defense. However, it was too late when the alliance was formed because the demons had already taken over 3/4 of the mainland. Now, the area under control of the temples was even less than 1/4 of the original. Master Yu was in tears as he explained the history of mankind. He made sure that Chen remembered all the humiliation and suffering brought by the demons so that he could feel his real goal as a knight. A knight was obliged to protect his home, his family, and mankind. The resolution that they were taught daily during the initial years of training was based on reality. A knight's real aim was to protect mankind. The job required immense strength and courage. Demons had already murdered millions and billions of their brothers and sisters. The ground was painted red with their blood, but the 6 temples had never shown remorse to them in the past. It was high time they realized their true incentive and fought vigorously against their enemy. For mankind to reproduce and flourish, for the chance to gain back everything they had lost, it was imperative to flee away those cruel, poisonous demons. Knights were entrusted with the duty to fight till their last drop of blood in order to regain the lost glory of mankind. Chen was overflowing with immense motivation. He repeated after his master that the demons were the enemies they hated from the core of their hearts. All their effort was up to 1 day. It would cost them only a day to kick them out of their homes and regain what was lost. If they didn't drive them away from the mainland, then they could one day dare to enter Odin Mountain as well. Yu tried to highlight patriotism within him by putting forward an example of his mother. What would his mother face if the demons invaded their home? Hearing of his mother, Chen's eyes portrayed fury. After that, Yu was assured that he would remember the lesson forever. Though it was just a single lesson, Chen perceived it as he had gained a lot of knowledge. He had gained a new direction of motivation. Deep down, he formed a soft corner for his master in his heart. Getting over with the first lecture, Master Yu said that the next lectures would be about the origin of the 6 temples and some basic information regarding infernos. The next morning was a test of whatever he had learned up till then. That was all for the first day of training. It was almost noon, so he offered him a lavish lunch. Everything on the dining table was so delicious, but Chen was hesitant to sit and begin eating. Perhaps he was feeling uncomfortable sitting at the table and eating alongside his master. After a whole lot of thinking, he came to the conclusion that he should sit on the floor and eat. Just when he was about to touch down his knees to sit, Yu stopped him. He rebuked him for being underconfident and lacking self-respect. According to his perspective, men had gold under their knees. It was highly offending for a man to bend down in front of anyone so easily. Chen lowered his head with embarrassment. He thought that he was doing it all in respect, but it wasn't a good thing to do as he wasn't some kind of divine entity to be respected like that. Just a small token of favor doesn't mean that the favorer had acquired the right to enslave someone. However, when Chen revealed the reason for being reluctant to eat, Yu was shocked. Chen asked him to offer him a smaller quantity and quality of food daily, and compensate for it on the day of his holiday, so that he could take food for his mother. His mother had never eaten such nice food before, and he wanted her to have it too. Master Yu was extremely grieved to witness such a heartbreaking emotion in a young boy. That boy surely valued family relations a lot. Yu was kind enough to solve his problem. As long as Chen fulfilled his expectations regarding training, he promised to deliver the same lavish meal to his mother on a daily basis. In that way, both he and his mother would live a peaceful life. Chen was immensely happy and grateful to his master for being kind to him. He then merrily enjoyed lunch with him and then went off to rest afterward. Yu also took a short walk out in the garden after lunch. He wandered around aimlessly because he was caught in deep thoughts about Chen. That small kid's personality was full of modesty, honesty, pity, bravery, fairness, sacrifice, honor, dedication, love, and justice. What else did he lack from the 10 big qualities of a knight? Was he really a gifted knight? There were hundreds of different apprehensions in his mind which called for explanations. However, it was a matter of years, and he couldn't grasp all the information within minutes of meeting him. He headed home soon after the walk and found out that Chen had also freshened up after lunch. It was time to show him around the locality. The first thing to show him was his residence. The small cottage beside was all prepared for him, where he was to live 6 days a week. Next, he gave him 2 bamboo sticks with an armrest at one end. Chen had no idea what those sticks were used for. They were shaped like swords, but were much lighter and tougher. To demonstrate the practical use of the bamboo sword, Yu took him to a forest nearby. The forest was a natural habitat for owls and ants. There were millions of aggressive ants and owls dwelling there. The special breed that flourished there wasn't considered natural. They were way too aggressive towards the intruders. In order to protect themselves, the natives made use of the bamboo swords. Going further deeper into the forest, they came across a huge rock. Yu pulled aside the rock and kicked open a black lid, which served as an entrance to a secret abyss underneath. Within a split second after opening the lid, he plunged Chen into the abyss. Chen tumbled down into the huge abyss and fell onto the ground. He was astounded as to why the teacher had pushed him down. What was he trying to do? Was it some kind of training lecture? It was pitch dark inside there. He could not see anything except for the small crescent-shaped luminosity entering from the entrance of the cave. A while later, he heard his master say that it was one of the modules of his training. If he failed to endure the test, then he had no right to be trained further. When he got to know that it was part of his training, then all his fear disappeared. He had promised his master that he would perform well. This was just the first step towards winning his master's heart. He had to do well in it. He yelled out loud that he could endure it. He had only lost his sense of sight yet. He could still touch, taste, smell, feel, and listen. He was allowed to use all his remaining senses to understand the gloomy surroundings. It was a tough step, but he had to remain strong for the sake of his mother. After explaining the rules to him, Yu slammed shut the entrance lid and placed the huge stone back over it. He too understood that it was a harsh method of training, but if Chen survived it, then his hidden strengths would be unlocked very quickly. Chen remained within that daunting abyss for half an hour, after which Yu retrieved him. Poor little soul had blacked out in there. Yu carried him home and put him into the divine indoor pool to cure his aches. As soon as the divine water touched him, Chen regained consciousness. All his pain vanished as if it had never been there. It was as if all his wounds from the torment had been healed. The torment of surviving in that pitch-dark grave was severe. The mere thought of the darkness haunted him and brought back the pain. He ignored the hardship and enjoyed the high-quality bath time. After the bath, he was called for dinner. Chen suffered from immense hunger that day, which caused him to eat 2 extra portions. After he was done with dinner, Yu asked him to narrate his feelings about his experience in the abyss. He said that he had a very painful experience down there and couldn't dare to talk further about it. It was terrorizing even to think about it. Somehow he escaped the question, and they moved on to the next part. Yu ordered him to unsheath his bamboo sword and follow him to the cliff outside for a swordsmanship lecture. When it came to weapons, swords were the king of them because they could be used for attack as well as defense. However, to protect anything else from the sword, Chen must first learn how to protect himself. For that purpose, Yu demonstrated the letters tactic. While he performed the tactic, the blade of the sword moved so swiftly through the air that a beautiful ray of light reflected from it. Swordsmanship was an interesting part of training. Every commandment given by the master followed the pearly ray of light into his ears. The training persisted for quite a few hours, after which it was finally bedtime. The first day of the Chen's training was pretty hectic, but the hell training had only begun. There was much more to go. For 7 days straight, he was taught multiple knowledge related to languages and history every morning. A mini-test was conducted each day after the lecture, which was Chen's favorite part. The mornings used to be quite smooth and easy, but the day ahead of the afternoon used to be hell. The hectic grind would begin soon after lunch. In his initial week, he was taken to the owl ant nest for training. Despite spending a week there, each day's training ended on similar notes. Only fainting could mark the end of the session, after which he was taken to the hot water pool back home, where all the pain disappeared. After bathing and having dinner, they would go out to train in some sword moves. You taught him some unique tricks and forced him to remember them all. The swordsmanship lectures continued till late in the night, after which it was bedtime. However, the bedtime wasn't the usual one. Master Yu used to teach him the hit-sit technique, which meant sleeping while sitting. Poor little soul didn't get ample rest even after a full day of hectic grind. When a full week had passed, Yu finally allowed Chen a day off and allowed him to visit his mother. He had not felt such great happiness and excitement lately. Carrying the bamboo swords on his back, he rushed back home in order to make use of every second of that day. His stamina was surprisingly better as he didn't get tired even after running up and down mountainous streets. Perhaps his spiritual power might have jumped up a level or two within just a week of training. He attributed the increased strength to intense physical training. Little did he know that the strength came from the amalgamation of the powers of hot spring water and medicinal pills that Yu gave him. The two of the powers together were called Han Yun Ping Yin. The excitement and thrill of going home was interrupted all of a sudden as a ferocious, huge monster resembling a lizard emerged in front of him. It seemed to be a native monster of the owl ant nest. Chen had totally forgotten that he was passing through the danger zone. The mighty lizard growled at him. Though he was fretful, the situation demanded his courage and patience. Acting as per the requirements of the situation, he recalled that his master had informed him about the monster one day during the training. It was an average-ranked tailed lizard monster. Being a carnivore, it utilized spiritual strength to grow in size. There were sharp, spiny defensive plates on its back, and the tail was poisonous. A rather unique quality of the monster was that it always attacked below the prey's knees. As per its nature, the monster was all set to attack Chen's knees, but he somehow managed to counteract it with the bamboo sword. However, he wasn't able to drive away the monster. It wasn't as average as he had expected, but since it was a magical creature, it wasn't supposed to be that appalling. Moreover, he was much stronger than before thanks to Master Yu. While he was distracted by his thoughts, the lizard approached him again. This time, Chen wasn't left with enough time to counteract the attack. The monster banged his knee with the spiny scales on its back. It was clever enough to utilize the rush pierce technique from its improved and modified body. Chen was almost knocked over by the attack, but was saved as he got support from the bamboo sword. As its final attack, the lizard opened its huge mouth with saw-edged teeth in order to gulp him down. Its tongue protruded out from the throat. Chen was almost blacked out as he witnessed the petrifying scene, but he noticed its weak point just in time. The part of its body just below the chin was weak and flabby. He analyzed that if he attacked it with the sharp end of the bamboo sword, then the lizard would bleed to death instantly. He gave it a try, and to his utmost astonishment, the lizard immediately tripped over, and fountains of blood outpoured from its neck. It was an achievement. He had killed a monster. During the intense time when death was just at his door, Chen forced out his potential. He felt as if his spiritual power had broken boundaries, as it might have surpassed level 30. Level 30 and above were considered as the stages of true knighthood. Letting bygones be bygones, he didn't stop for longer in the forest and continued his journey home. As he reached home, he saw that his mom was already outside waiting for him near the door. She had not seen her child for a whole week. She missed him badly. The moment of their reconciliation was so emotional. After warmly welcoming him home, she called him over to the dinner table. On the table were all the lavish and delicious dishes that Chen could ever desire to eat. His mom had prepared well for his arrival. Seeing all the food items made Chen's heart at peace. His master was an honest man because he had fulfilled the promise of delivering meals to his mother. As the food was getting cold, they dug into it quickly. After eating, Chen handed over a few pennies to his mom. She was surprised to see money with him because he had no source of income. He told her that Master Yu gave it to him because knight apprentices were salaried. In reality, he had earned those pennies by trading the lizard's tail, which he had just killed on his way home. The truth would hurt his mom, so he lied to her. After all, a small lie wouldn't go against the code of conduct. The sparkle of love in his mother's eyes made him forget all the worries. All the difficulties he had been enduring the whole week were just to bring that smile to her face. Though she was happy seeing him much stronger within just a week, there was a worry hiding behind that smile. The fact that he was undergoing such tough training made her worried for her child, but Chen removed all her apprehensions. He told her that the master was very nice and kind. He was given good food and good facilities there, so she did not need to worry about him at all. He told his mother about the hot spring too. Life there was going good. Before he encountered and killed the monster, replying to that question wouldn't have been easy. However, when he had dealt alone with such a huge monster, the answer became simple. His master had given him a lot within just a single week. He was indeed a good man. The toughness of the training was all for his own benefit. He was grateful at that point for his teacher's strictness. If it weren't for tough training, he would have never been able to save himself from the ferocious lizard. Just like that, he narrated to her everything that had happened the previous week. Both mother and son had $1 million in time with each other. Within that hustle and bustle, the day ended, and the moon rose into the sky. While his mom rested in her room, he went into the kitchen to prepare the Pai Yuan liquid medicine for her. Because she wasn't told about the liquid as an ingredient of the medicine, he stewed it along with the vegetables to make a soup. Earlier, he used to make that soup daily for his mom, but now the frequency has been reduced to once a week. His mother living alone kind of made him sad, but he needed to stay away from home. He had to work hard in order to provide her adequate protection. Just like that, the holiday was spent well with his mother. The next morning, he woke up early and headed back to the mountain peak to Master Yu, where his daily quiz was awaiting him. Yu was sitting at the table, waiting for Chen's arrival to begin the test right away. The first question was about the spiritual power levels of top knights and knight apprentices. The question was pretty tough to answer, but thanks to Chen's outstanding memory, he made no mistakes. Yu appreciated his hard work as he answered it all correctly. After the exam, they began with the new lesson. The topic of discussion was a controversial one. They were to learn how to compare the pros and cons of attack and defense and select the more important option as a conclusion. When Chen was asked to give his opinion on the topic, he was blank. Despite thinking about it, he couldn't come up with an answer. It was natural for even a highly qualified knight to get blank at this question. Thus, Chen wasn't to be blamed. In fact, Yu admired his honesty in not coming up with a random answer. The question was controversial because true knights were categorized into two categories, the fighters and the protectors. The fighters were the knights who prioritized attacking. They were well suited for entering fights and combats and had enough strength even when alone. Meanwhile, the protectors were the knights who prioritized defense. They specialized in medicine and healing arts. The discriminating factor of the protectors was that they worked better in teams. When explaining about both groups, Yu asked Chen which of the two teams would be greater in number. The question was difficult to answer, but Chen came up with a clever answer. He recalled Yu telling him that the knight's attacking strength was very high. If that was so, then there must be more fighters than defenders. However, his luck didn't work on that question. The answer was wrong. Yu told him that the ratio of protectors to attackers was 10-1. The protectors were 10 times greater in number than the attackers. The statistics were quite complex to understand. Chen's befogged expressions indicated that he required more explanation of the topic. The key concept behind the unusual proportion was teamwork. A knight was not only responsible for caring about himself, he was charged with an obligation to think about the whole community. Only a team with 6 groups could unleash the greatest attack together. Thus, in terms of teamwork values, protecting others was paramount. As Chen grasped the concept, he asked his teacher whether he should become a fighter or a protector in the future. Yu dedicated the choice completely to him. His personality and skills mimicked those of a protector. Still, because Yu himself was a fighter, he had been teaching him the skills of a fighter. Chen had developed an interest in both categories. He was having a hard time with the decision, so Yu gave him a whole year to come up with a solid response. Now he had a whole year to make his decision. Fast forward, rolling into a scene 1 year later, Chen arrived in an urban area somewhere along the southeastern side of the mainland. He was tasked by his master after an entire year of training at the Odin Mountain, for which he had to visit the market. The market was full of local vendors promoting their products. On the street, several beautiful ladies stopped by Chen to admire his handsomeness. They were impressed by his simple yet elegant attire. They considered him an outsider or a resident of the countryside because his personality was too decent for an urban resident. He heard girls calling him cute and pretty. They also seemed to be impressed by the huge swords he carried on his back. It was a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity for them to witness a knight. Meanwhile, Chen was befuddled to see such a huge city with all kinds of big shops around. He was looking for the Hao Yue Hall, which didn't seem to be anywhere near. Instead of wasting time searching for it himself, he thought of asking for directions from a native. After asking a few people, he somehow managed to reach the hall, and when he did, he was astounded. The Hao Yue Hall was immensely huge. It was a magnificent building. It was far cooler than the Odin Hall. As he walked up to its huge entrance, 2 guards stopped him and asked why he was visiting the temple hall. He said that he wanted to meet the hall master, Nalan Shu. His teacher had sent him a letter for Master Nalan. The guard asked for the letter so that he could give it to the master, but Chen wanted to give it to him personally, as per his master's instructions. However, the guard replied that he couldn't allow him inside as only the people of the temple were granted entrance. While they were having the argument, stomping footsteps approached the entrance gate. A while later, an angry lady abashed the guards in a cold voice for purposely trying to make a child uncomfortable in front of the hall. The guards stepped back at once and greeted the lady with respect. She was a real senior knight. She had overheard all the quarrels and said that humanity was superior to rules. A small kid like him wasn't capable of harming the prestige of the temple. She said that she would take the responsibility of taking that kid to Uncle Nalan. Her name was Lee Shin. Lee grasped Chen's hand and headed inside the temple. Chen found her hand to be pretty rough. The roughness could come from repeated sword training. Meanwhile, his own hand was way too soft for Lee to touch. She glanced at him with affection and care while they walked inside. Suddenly, Chen paused as he saw a strange sign on one of the walls. He was curious to know the backstory of it. Shin explained that the symbol represented the All-Night Temple's highest honor, the Divine Throne. The honor was exclusive to the Divine Knights. They were the best of all the knights. Their repute could be regarded as straight out of heaven. Chen was amazed by their strength. He wondered why they were called the Divine Knights, so he asked her about it. She said that they were the owners of the Divine Throne and received recognition from it, due to which they were bestowed with the title of Divine Knight. Every single Divine Throne was a genuine artifact. Hearing about them, a dream of becoming one popped into Chen's mind. However, there was still a question in his mind. He had learned during the training that there were only 6 divine thrones, and if each divine knight owned one of them, there wouldn't be enough of them. She mocked him for his foolishness. It was too naive of him to consider everything so easy. Becoming a divine knight wasn't a child's play. Up till then, there were only 3 divine knights in the whole kingdom, because qualifying for it was immensely difficult. They were so lost in the discussion that they didn't even realize how quick they had reached Master Nalan's office. However, he had not arrived yet because it was still early in the morning. While they waited outside his office, she suddenly sneaked closer to Chen's ears and whispered to him to reveal his true identity as there was no one around. She thought that he was pretending to be a boy in order to conceal his female gender because it was tough for girls to be accepted there. Moreover, his pretty face made her even more firm in her stance because boys cannot have such cute and innocent faces. It was a common practice for young girls to transform their appearance. Still, it couldn't be sustained for long, as eventually their true identity would be revealed towards pubertal age. Chen was freaking out by her behavior. He felt blood rising up his cheeks. To clear her misconception, he told her that he was actually a boy. Now it was Lee's turn to freak out after hearing the reality. She was mistaken because his hands were so soft, and he was so beautiful, just like a cute little girl. Though she was extremely embarrassed in front of him, and sweat was running down her body, she tried to calm herself down as she was the older one amongst the two, and had all the right to boss him. When she first saw him, she thought that she had found a girl who was in the same boat as her. Turned out that she was wrong. However, to save herself from further embarrassment, she let him off and asked him to keep the incident a secret. Chen promised to obey her because she was a senior after all. Still, it was pretty obvious to him that she was nervous and anxious. Putting an end to their issue, a huge, sturdy man suddenly appeared out of nowhere and asked Shin what she had come for. The man was so huge that Chen's small, pebbly eyes had difficulty gazing at his face. He even made the ground quaver with his heavy footsteps. Who could he be? Chen was befuddled. He couldn't discern anything at that moment. However, it was revealed that he was the hallmaster. As Jin referred to him as Uncle Nalan, she began joking around with him, saying that it was high time he had lost weight. He was a tall height man, and on top of that, he was chubby and plump. If he ever climbed the stairs to go to the first floor, the temple hall would crumble down. He laughed it off by saying that he got fatter even by drinking water. Thus, it wasn't in his control to lose weight. Just in the middle of the conversation, his attention was caught by Chen's beauty. He asked Chen if the young lady was her relative. Chen banged his head with his palm when the master mistook him for a girl too. Why did everyone consider him a girl? Was there really something wrong with his appearance? He couldn't take any more misconceptions, so he cleared it for the last time that he was a boy. Master was shocked to know the reality. He looked at Shin with a puzzled expression. She explained to him the whole incident of how she rescued Chen from the guards, who weren't letting him deliver the letter. After becoming familiar with everything, he asked for the letter. As he read the letter, his expression gradually changed. His mood was unlike the one before he read it. He gave him a sideway glance with a highly serious look on his face, and ordered Chen to follow him. Even Jin got apprehensive, as she had never seen him in that mood. He was genuinely down to earth. It was unexpected for a man of his status to become reverent all of a sudden. What could the letter be about? As Chen followed the master down the hallway, she sneakily glanced at them. As the two of them reached the main temple hall, Naylan opened up about the letter. He told Chen that his master allowed him to take the standard night examination. The news wasn't as surprising for Chen as it was for Shin. She almost jumped out of her skin upon hearing it. How could a boy 11 or 12 years of age be allowed to appear in that exam? She was the greatest genius of her generation, and she passed the test when she was 13 years old. Someone younger than her couldn't pass the test. Furthermore, Master Naylan's tone indicated that Chen's teacher was senior and higher ranked than him. Could he be a Radiant Knight? If he was one, then he could become a master of any temple hall. He wouldn't need to send Chen to Master Naylan for the examination in that case. The matter was quite complicated to understand. Perhaps she was thinking it out way too much. It was pretty plausible that Chen was just a cute and innocent little boy, and his master wanted him to see the world. Both scenarios seemed equally valid in explaining the issue, but she just couldn't get it straight. Meanwhile, Naylan prepared for the exam. He informed Chen about the rules. The task was to hit a tall stone pillar with all his strength. Naylan didn't consider him capable enough to undertake the exam. His teacher could have mistakenly sent him there. However, his assumptions were nullified as soon as Chen drew out his sword. He became an entirely different person as he held the mighty sword in his hand. The innocence transformed into courage and valor. He clenched his fist and swooshed the sword onto the stone with his entire strength. For a moment, everyone was still. The results were calculated. A while later, the computer displayed the final results. He had scored 107 points. Naylan and Shin were shocked. He had passed the test. They were taken aback to know that an apparently delicate and innocent little boy had passed the exam in a single attempt. Master announced that he had a second step, first-rank spiritual energy, which was amazing. The fact that he had not used any enhancements to improve the overall output made it even harder for them to believe in his success. Let alone the master, Chen himself, was in shock to see the results. It was strange how he improved so much within just a year of training. Last year, he was at the 25th level of spiritual power. When asked about his age, he told the master that he was 10 years old. That was an even bigger blow for Shin. Earlier, she thought her record was broken by a 12-year-old boy, which was somewhat acceptable. However, losing to a 10-year-old boy was a huge disgrace to her. The status of the youngest standard knight, which she had been enjoying, was now snatched by Chen within just an instance. It all seemed inconceivable. Nevertheless, there was yet a twist in the story. Chen had passed the test as per regular conditions, but according to his master's letter, he had to fight against a knight for at least 15 minutes. The condition put forward by his teacher was too far-fetched. Even a standard knight ranked higher than 5th rank could not last against a genuine knight. He was just at the first rank of the second step. It was cruel to burden a small kid to such a great extent. Anyhow, it was his teacher's decision. Nothing much could be done about it. He was asked to select a knight to initiate the fight. Chen's eyes opened as wide as the Grand Canyon. He was too stressed out to fight against a knight. It seemed almost impossible. Anyhow, he managed to remain positive and hopeful. Out of the blue, Shin came forward and announced that she would fight against him as a knight. The reason behind such a sudden and impulsive decision was pretty obvious. She was jealous of Chen's outpouring strength. She wanted to test his actual potential by putting up a ferocious fight against him. Master Naylan agreed to let her fight and warned her not to go too far with her strength, as Chen was just a small kid after all. She was ordered to enter the battle zone with him in order to begin the fight. When they stood opposite each other, he stared sharply at her. The cold stare depicted his maturity. Though small in age, he was a highly sophisticated and mature kid. As the whistle blew, he initiated the combat with an impactful move called the Thorny Charge. It was a good start for him, but Shin was able to counteract it easily because of her experience. The next move was again from Chen's side. He executed another pure white edge. His spectacular second move caught Naylan's attention. Jin realized that she required an even stronger counteract to keep him aback. She swooshed a lightning stab towards him in order to knock him down immediately, but to her utmost astonishment, it was blocked proficiently by him. How on earth was it possible? Its strength was far beyond his capacity, but he managed to endure it. Naylan was in shock by then. That was not all. Chen had yet another powerful move planned in his mind. Without giving his opponent a break, he launched an instant blast crosscut attack at her. As he plunged himself into the air to deliver the attack, Shin was all perplexed. She had no option but to use the heavenly battle array to counteract him. It was extraordinary of him to force her to summon help from the heavens. She was deeply embarrassed. It was high time for her to put an end to the disgrace she had continuously faced since the beginning of the fight. It was her turn to attack. She had to gain back her face no matter what. Before attacking, she warned him to stay mindful because something outrageous was coming up. Even Nayland got worried as he saw the fury in her eyes. Her spiritual power was much higher than his. Chen would definitely be having a tough time standing against her. Despite repeated warnings, Chen wasn't afraid at all. He was as confident as ever. He formed the pose to counteract her when Shin drew her sword to initiate the attack. As he touched his knees on the ground in preparation for the defensive pose, his eyes shone peculiarly bright. A strange luminosity radiated from them. The luminosity grew further and extended all around as if it were to form a protective film to shield him. The radiance was blindingly bright. Nayland and Shin were astounded to see it coming from him. It appeared as if they were aware of the nature of the aura. It was the legendary divine block, which could be used to counteract any kind of attack. The shocking fact was that only Radiant Knights could use it. A 10-year-old standard knight using such a block made no sense. It was beyond their perception. While they were busy thinking about it, Chen had already blocked Shin's attack entirely. Nayland was taken aback by his strength. Shin's spiritual energy was much higher than his. He couldn't counteract her so easily. The results spoke for themselves. It could be none other than divine obstruction. Meanwhile, Shin was befuddled. She couldn't discern what just happened to her. Her hands were all numb. Everything was so weird. She had hundreds of unanswered questions in her mind. She asked Uncle Nalin for an explanation. Apparently, Chen was merely a first-ranked standard knight. It was unbelievable for a novice knight to fight like that. He told her that the little kid had been using divine obstruction. The reality took Shin aback. She was aware of the fact that divine obstruction could be used only by Radiant Knights. It was jaw-dropping for her. In reply to their concerns, Chen said that he had just used defensive skills. He had no idea what divine obstruction meant. His teacher taught him the skill, and he implemented it without knowing its context. Master Nayland was convinced by Chen's innocence. He trusted the fact that he was a naive kid who was unaware of reality. However, the skill was a divine obstruction, and he couldn't counteract Shin's attack. In reality, being a Radiant Knight wasn't imperative to learn the skill. If a younger ranked knight possessed adequate speed and talent, then he could be taught the skill by a 6-step teacher. The case was the opposite earlier when only Radiant Knights could use the skill. However, a formidable knight obtained the approval of the Alliance for amending the rule. Master explained the deeper dynamics of the physics behind the skill. The defense provided by regular blocks was slightly better than that of the metal planks. Only those whose offensive power was 3 times superior to the defensive power of the block used could weaken the strength of the block. In addition to that, the skill was effective only if the reaction speed was fast enough. With efficient and adequate training, a successful block could evolve into an effective attack. The facts and figures were beyond Chen's mental capabilities. He couldn't grasp the concept and politely asked the master whether he had passed the exam or not. Even though 15 minutes had not passed yet, Jin's condition didn't permit her to fight further. Nayland congratulated him on passing the test. Completing 15 minutes didn't matter after he put up such a strong skill. There was nothing more to the assessment, so he went to his office to fetch a few things that Chen's teacher wanted him to bring back. The way he walked to his office indicated that he was still not over the trauma. The mental shock that Chen gave them by his outstanding performance was too huge to get over with. Nayland had not calmed down yet. He couldn't even walk straight. On the other hand, Jin was in total shock as well. Her emotions were superseded by jealousy too, because she lost the status of being the youngest knight able to pass the standard test. She wondered what further spectacular skills that kid might be able to perform. Although it was obvious that he had used a divine power, she thought of confirming it once again from Chen. He was still firm on his stance that he had used a simple defensive move. Shin felt dizzy after the whole incident. She couldn't believe how such a powerful skill could be so simple and easy for him. A few moments later, Nayland returned with a small box containing a bright and shining insignia in it. It was the insignia of a standard knight which he presented to Chen. On it was a star that symbolized the fact that he was at the first rank of the step. The step had 5 ranks. For each subsequent rank, he would be given a new star. After acquiring all 5 stars, a new exam would be conducted for the next step. He also gave him a small gold-colored stone, which he referred to as the Awakening Stone. His teacher asked for the stone to be sent along with him. After he received the essentials, Chen sought permission to leave, as he had some other stuff to do in the city as well. He inquired about the directions to the Adventurers Guild. As he left for it, Shin expressed her curiosity about him to Uncle Nalin. At his age, it wasn't possible to even assist, yet he alone performed the divine obstruction. She wondered who his teacher was. Master said that he couldn't reveal the confidential details to her, but that boy was surely going to become the Alliance's new hope. Judging by his skills, it was evident that she wasn't the only genius around. He advised her to focus and practice diligently because she had to appear in the next assessment soon. Hiding her jealousy behind a pleasant smile, she said that she was eager to meet the intelligent kid again. Master said that he expected him to be back 2 years later for the magical selection of the Alliance. Coming back to Chen's journey, he had reached the Adventurers Guild. It was quite a large building with a huge entrance. Surpassing the entrance, there was a mission counter. He walked up to the counter where there was a female receptionist. She asked him what kind of a mission he wanted to do. The fun fact was that she didn't mistook him for a girl. For the first time, someone actually considered him a boy. However, when she referred to him as a boy, a weirdly dressed man standing right behind Chen broke into fits of laughter. He mocked the lady for calling him a boy, as it was pretty evident that he was a girl. He even offered Chen to buy him candy and said that doing missions wasn't his piece of cake. Everyone in the hall started jeering at Chen. Still, he ignored them and told the receptionist lady that he wanted to go for a second-ranked task that would require the killing of beasts. The lady considered him too small for the task and politely refused, as it would be impossible for him. The other man once again ridiculed him for opting for a mission way above his capacity. He metaphorically said that he would be going home to ask for milk if he were of Chen's age. Not only he, but the whole crowd standing there laughed at Chen. Their behavior made the poor kid anxious. Witnessing the discomfort on his face, the lady counseled him to ignore them, as they were merely living their lives with knives and blood. They behaved oddly under stress. The man still didn't stop with the babbling. He told him to go home and drink milk. The situation went from an ordinary scuffle to bullying. The man bullied Chen in the name of his mother. That was when Chen stood up for himself. He couldn't stand his mother's humiliation. However, his angry expression didn't calm the man. He continued with the nonsense. When he crossed all the boundaries, Chen decided to teach him a lesson. He, as a standard knight of the Knight Temple Hall, challenged him to a duel. The last one standing would be the winner. Though he gave him a cold glare and spoke quite courageously, the man didn't believe him. In fact, he said that he wouldn't even have passed the puberty standard yet. With that level of expertise, he could only gnaw on his ankles in the fight. To cut short the crap, Chen asked him to meet him outside for the duel, as the hall wasn't a suitable place to fight. Because the kid persisted, the man agreed and invited everyone to watch the show outside. As the crowd walked outside, the receptionist spotted a first-ranked standard knight's insignia shining bright on the floor. Chen had accidentally dropped it when he went outside. The lady couldn't believe her eyes when she realized that the kid was a standard knight in reality. Zooming into the scenes outside the Adventurers Guild, the whole street was occupied with passers-by who were excited to witness the duel. The grumpy man called on Chen to remain confident and initiate the fight, as he wasn't going to kill him. He would just beat him senseless and sell him to a brothel to earn him some beer money. It was a nail-biting moment for the crowd. Most of the viewers were native to the area, thus they were aware of the man's volatile behavior. He was a willful man who was definitely going to beat the kid badly. It seemed to them as if the kid had chosen the wrong man to mess up with. Getting started with the duel, Chen unsheathed his bright, sparkling sword. As he acquired the position for the attack, his sword's tip turned pure white. That was when the opponent fighter noticed that the kid was actually a knight from the temple hall. He knew that an extremely powerful move was coming up. Thus, he decided to counteract it with the best of his moves and run for the sake of his life. He geared up to execute the heavy double-edged slash move as a counterattack, but to everyone's surprise, Chen blocked it. The slash attack wasn't ordinary. It was a soldier's top-level skill, which Chen blocked in a split second by using divine obstruction. The crowd was awestruck. The opponent fighter was also taken aback by the immensely powerful defense. However, the duel wasn't over yet. Without giving the man even a second to plan his next move, Chen crossed his sword with his axe to execute the instant blast crosscut. By virtue of the powerful skill, the opponent died on the spot, and his body was torn into pieces, with blood spurting from his bare veins. Everyone in the street was in total shock. They couldn't even blink their eyes after what they saw. After the ferocious duel ended, Chen stood up proudly and said that the man endured the consequences of humiliating his mother. Nevertheless, the dramatic end to the fight didn't win the hearts of the crowd. Instead, they got furious as their fellow soldier was killed. They swarmed over him to kill him too, as a punishment for killing their brother. Seeing a sea of soldiers approaching him, Chen got befuddled. He couldn't find any way to escape them. Their attack couldn't be justified because the agreement for the duel was mutual. Why did they want to avenge the winner of the duel? Poor kid had no way but to run as far as possible from the site. The angry men followed him along with their swords, but the whole street was silenced at once when a loud and sharp voice came out of nowhere. It was the elder sister, Shin. She came to support Chen. She announced that he was innocent in the case because it was a fair duel. When someone died in a mutually consented fair duel, then even the city police couldn't interfere. She threatened to kill the angry men if they kept on with the uproar. Despite being scolded by her, the men argued for their dead brother. They said that he had just made a couple of jokes and the kid went for the kill. The extremist attitude of the kids made them complain about the empathy of the knights. Nevertheless, Sister Shin had an answer to that complaint as well. Chen was a retribution knight, not a guardian knight. His sole purpose was to eliminate evilness and maintain peace. If that man made disgusting jokes and comments at his mother, then he deserved to be killed. After defending her junior brother, she challenged the men to a duel with her if they were still unsatisfied with the reasoning. She cast a magical spell, and all of a sudden, an immensely beautiful and gorgeous unicorn appeared. It was Sister Shin's mount, the Rose Unicorn, which was a fifth-step magical creature. The mere appearance of the creature was enough to drive away the men. Even if they combined several of their ordinary lives, they couldn't stand against that single unicorn. They decided to escape the crime scene at once to guard their lives. Shin ordered them to run faster and disappear from the street within a split second, or else she would make sure to teach them a lesson. As soon as the crowd dismantled, she came back towards Chen and scolded him for coming alone to the Adventurers Guild. She knew that it was a messy place, so she followed him immediately to keep an eye on him. He hesitantly replied that his teacher had instructed him to undertake a second-level mission. Because he needed to obey his master's orders and visit the guild, Shin decided to accompany him to ensure his safety. She held his hand, took him inside to the receptionist, and introduced him as her junior. The receptionist lady was already aware of Chen's reality as a standard knight because of the insignia she found, but when she saw him with Jin, she was way too impressed. Her heart was filled with infinite respect for him. Witnessing such a young knight was a once-in-a-blue-moon spectacle for her. He was immensely handsome at that age, so it was no wonder how attractive he would be in the future. She returned him the insignia and offered the mission of hunting for level 2 magical creatures. Chen accepted the mission and was gearing up for it, but Shin interrupted him. She wanted to accompany him. He refused her because the mission was meant for him to accomplish on his own without any aid. However, she insisted on going because she was worried for him. Eventually, they both settled on the plan that Chen would hunt the magical creature himself, and Shin would follow him just in case the monster attacked him. After deciding everything, she once again summoned her Rose Unicorn mount, and they both hopped onto it. The mount galloped along its way to the mission course. Chen was amazed by the luxury experience. The flight was so smooth and stable. He never expected a knight's mount to be so incredible. Riding such a swift and awesome mount was a dream come true to him. He asked his elder sister to tell him the secret to getting a mount like that. She agreed to tell him the secret if he answered one of her queries honestly. She asked him if he had ever killed a human being earlier, because the way he reacted to the murder was too light and easy. She recalled the agony she went through after killing someone for the first time. She vomited for 3 days straight. Chen was honest enough to answer her correctly. He told her about the incident when he killed a magical beast earlier. His teacher had taught him to treat all enemies as a magical beast and show no mercy. Though it was his first time killing a human, he took him as a beast, and he didn't feel any discomfort. While he narrated his narrative, Jin stared into his eyes with affection. She was having difficulty perceiving him as pure-hearted or cold-blooded. Whatever he was, his teacher was bringing him up very well. His stance was justified. One should eliminate all evil. Now that she was done with her queries, he again asked her how to obtain a Rose Unicorn. She seemed reluctant to reveal the deeper details because he was going to discover about it in the future anyway. He had all the qualifications to go to the Knight's Holy Mountain and choose a mount. As she explained it, he was befogged. He didn't know anything about that place. To make it clearer, she said that the majority of mediocre knights were only able to choose a fine horse or tame a wild, magical beast to be their mount. Whereas those who became standard knights before the age of 20 were qualified to visit the Knight's Holy Mountain and pick their mount. According to that rule, Chen would be allowed to choose from one of the best creatures. The Knight's Holy Mountain was a place where all kinds of powerful magical beasts were raised by the Knight's Temple. That mountain had a gigantic circle in its center, which made it much easier to tame the beasts. As long as a young knight managed to be acknowledged by any one of them, he could choose it as his mount. The highest-tiered mounts came from that place. She was quite clear with her words, but Chen still had a few lame questions in his mind. He wondered what he would choose if all the beasts had already been tamed. The answer to his objection was pretty simple, because there were even less than a dozen under 20 knights each year. Furthermore, the Holy Mountain occasionally performed a magical beast summoning. Thus, it was highly implausible for the beast population to run short. There was yet a more exciting fact to the mounts. It was said that the population consisted of more level 9 magical beasts than any other kind. If a knight was able to secure one, then it could serve as a straight path leading to rank 9 of the profession. Hearing about the amazing stuff, Chen gradually started developing an interest in the topic. He asked his sister about the level of her Rose Unicorn. It was of level 5. the first rank, but was still growing. Upon growing fully, it could reach level 7. Though her level wasn't as high, she advised him to work harder in order to achieve the level of rank 6 Radiant Knights in the future. The motivation sparked a new incentive in him. Now, he had the goal of setting his sight on the Knight's holy mountain first, and then flourishing even more to reach the Radiant level. He was a determined student who could go to any extent to accomplish his dream. Returning to their actual journey of the mission, they still had not encountered any beasts on their way. Chen's task was to hunt 2 10-level mid-rank magical beasts. Considering his previous accomplishments, it wasn't much of a back-breaking task for him. With Jin's protection, he accomplished the mission within just half a day. As the mission ended, it was time for Chen to return back to Odin Town. The sun was about to set, and the horizon was turning purplish-orange. Shin bid him farewell as he set off on his journey back home, about 200 miles from Haoyue City. Sometimes fate between humans worked in wonderful ways. Shin developed homely feelings with her newly met brother in no time. Similarly, the encounter proved to be a lovely experience for Chen, too. He had witnessed a lot more new things that day than he had ever done before. The best of the whole experience was the rose unicorn. It was awesomely amazing. He yearned to have one of his own in the future. That was a whole vibe on its own, but he also accomplished much more from that trip. He managed to complete his mission within a single day, along with the other chores allotted to him. It all made him so happy. On top of that, there were still a few hours till night, so he had the chance to visit his mother, which made him even happier. He merrily crossed the fields on his way home. He was excited to surprise his mother, as she wouldn't be expecting to see him in the middle of the week. It was going to be a pleasant night with her. As he reached the gate to his home, he secretly opened the door and sneaked inside to surprise her. Little did he know that he would face a shock himself. As he peeped through the gate into the garden, he witnessed the most startling sight ever. On the garden bench sat his mother with a man. She was sitting so close to him that they seemed to share an intimate relationship. To his utmost astonishment, that man was no other than his dearest teacher, Shin Yu. It was a huge mental blow for the poor kid to see his master so close to his mother. The circumstances intensified further as his mother saw him. She screamed at the top of her throat when she received the sudden surprise. In extreme stress, Chen perceived the situation wrongly. He thought his master was bullying and blackmailing his mom, so he insulted him badly and called him over for a fight. Master Yu slowly got up from the bench and walked closer to him. It appeared as if he was offended by Chen's rudeness. He poked his bamboo sword at him and ordered him to initiate the fight. As Chen glanced into his master's eyes, he felt ashamed and embarrassed. He was the second most important personality to him, his revered teacher. It was immensely difficult for him to stand up in front of such a respectable man, but the matter was of his beloved mother, who gave him life. He sighed in agony. Why did it have to happen to him? The circumstances compelled him to attack his master. There was no other choice. He picked up his sword and swooshed it straight towards the master, but the move was way too weak. Yu counteracted it with almost no difficulty. It could be perceived as the opposite as well. Master Yu's strength was so great that Chen's highly impactful attack couldn't harm him at all. As he was blocked, he fell hard onto the ground. Yu scolded him for using the wrong technique. He had always been teaching him to remain calm and confident while fighting. Whoever the enemy, even if his master, he was taught to remain contented and collected. He was disappointed with him for forgetting about the basic rules. A while later, Chen stood up and got ready for the next attack. Just as he was about to aim his sword, the master poked him with his bamboo stick. Surprisingly, just a mere touch of that stick shuddered Chen from his core. It was an extremely powerful stick that kept him away from approaching his master. No matter how hard he tried to take a step ahead, he couldn't move from his place. When he was sick and tired of wasting his energy, he thought of another very genius idea. The closest he could get to was Yu's arm from which he was holding the bamboo stick. Without moving his feet, he advanced his head towards Yu's arm and bit it with the full potential of his teeth. The bite was so firm that his teeth made indentations into the master's skin. Tiny drops of blood started dripping from his hand. It was so painful for him, but he endured it gently and without saying anything. Eventually, the force of the bite reduced with each passing second. Chen's attention was diverted from the attack towards a strange scent radiating from the master. He felt as if he was familiar with it. It made him so comfortable. He was so utterly lost in its coziness that he even forgot about the bite. Without realizing it, he released the bite. As he looked up toward his master, he burst into tears. Chen was mesmerized by his humbleness. How could a man be so great and kind? Chen's disrespectful behavior deserved to be disciplined with a severe punishment, but that man didn't even speak a word against him. If it had been some other master, he would have killed his student by then, but there he was, the most down-to-earth master. Chen cried out loudly and asked him for the reason behind the love and care. He asked him why he had not killed him despite the insolence. The answer that he received to his question was something that he wasn't prepared for. In fact, he could never be prepared for it. It was something out of the box, which Chen could never even imagine. Yu revealed the untold secret that had been kept for a long time. He said that he didn't kill or punish him because he was his father. The greatest mystery was unfolded by that sentence. Chen paused all of a sudden. He felt as if the whole world was an illusion trying to deceive him. Nothing was the same after his ears perceived those words. For once, he thought he was living in a dream. However, that confusion was set aside too, when his father came up to him and hugged him tightly, reaffirming that he was really his father, the father whom he had never met. Chen had inherited the name Long from his father. It was their family name. The way Yu hugged his son was an emotional sight to witness. His mother, who was standing near the bench, ran towards them while she sobbed the tears of fear. The hot-headed encounter between her husband and son had scared her to death. Yu said that he was just testing Chen's conduct during a sudden battle. He wanted to see if he was actually able to implement the theoretical rules that he had been teaching him, but it appeared as if his mother was his greatest weakness. He couldn't keep himself calm in her case. Poor little kid was an emotional brat. Meanwhile, Chen's expressions portrayed inquisitiveness to his mother. Within his sparkling eyes dwelled hundreds of questions, which only his mother could answer. His mother verified the fact that he was really his father and apologized for keeping such a huge secret. His father had been away for some reason for ages. He returned just a year back. When he noticed the sparking potential in Chen, he had already decided at that exact moment that he would make his child a strong knight like himself. To keep Chen on track with hard work, he, together with his wife, hid the fact of his return. He was afraid that his son would stop striving for perfection if he found out about the truth. If the reality had not been kept concealed, then he wouldn't be able to train him relentlessly. Nevertheless, their plan failed, and Chen eventually became aware of the reality. Chen couldn't help keeping his emotions back. He had always yearned to call someone his father. Throughout his childhood, he only had one relationship, which was with his mom. Even saying the word father seemed to be unfamiliar. Was the person standing in front of him really his father? Had life finally bestowed him with the friendship and love of a dad? After a few million-dollar moments of the whole family together, Chen's mom took him aside to apologize and explain everything. 10 years back, she came across an extremely painful experience in her life. The situation took such a strange turn that she couldn't even face her husband, due to which she left home and inhabited the village in which they were currently living. It was a hard step for her, but she had to take it due to the complexity of the circumstances. A few days into her new journey, she found out that she was pregnant with Chen. From then on, her life was solely dedicated to her child. She had been spending the next 10 years of her life with Chen after that incident. While she explained the tragedy, she repeatedly told Chen not to blame his father. He had no fault in the whole incident. In fact, he had been doing everything possible to search for his family throughout that decade. The search finally ended when he found his family just a year back. According to Chen's mother, Yue, she deserved all the hate. The precious years in which he could bond with his father were wasted because of her. It was all her fault. She sniveled while she acknowledged her mistake. However, Yu was a gentleman. Instead of blaming his wife, he consoled her to forget about the past. The pain and anguish had left them. There was no point in resurrecting painful memories. The past couldn't be changed, but the future could be improved by staying happy and content. With her husband's continuous support, she decided a year ago that she wouldn't let the past come in between them to ruin their present and future. She wanted to dedicate her life to her husband and child. The sole purpose of her life was to bring happiness to her home. Chen had already suffered a lot because of her. In fact, she didn't even want him to become a strong knight like his father. She wanted her child to live a peaceful and responsibility-free life. Chen interrupted her by expressing his strong desire to become a strong knight. He had been dreaming of it for long enough that it became the major goal of his life. His father intervened in between their conversation. He apologized to his son for being careless and irresponsible. He asked him if he could ever forgive and accept his irresponsible father. Chen couldn't bear it anymore. He was overflowing with all kinds of emotions. When the climax was reached, he burst into tears and hugged his father tightly. He could already feel as if he had been sharing an old relationship with him by just knowing him for merely a few minutes. It was as if the purpose of his blank childhood had been fulfilled. Though he didn't express his feelings, the lack of fatherly love had left a huge void in his life. He used to feel envious back when his friends used to play with their fathers. Anyhow, now he got his own father back. There was nothing to be envious of. The three of them were so lost in the new relationship that they almost lost count of time. It was the most peaceful moment for them. As the emotional session ended, the family dismantled and headed toward their regular chores. Yu and Chen went for a walk outside in the calm weather. As a father, he told him that his expectations would rise even further now that everything was settled. The training would also be much stricter than before. Chen was a rather sensible boy who understood that his father was doing it all for his sake. He promised to work even harder from then on. He aimed at being a knight as good and strong as his father. He considered him a very powerful man. Yu said that if he wanted to become a good knight, then there would not be a single moment of rest for him. In the past year, the purpose of training and practice was to enhance his reaction speed and mental capacity, and to strengthen his body overall. Now that his spiritual energy was enhanced to over 100 by all that training, it was time for training the inner spiritual energy. Spiritual energy was split into two types, an internal one and an external one. The external energy depicted the strength of the body from physical conditioning. Since it was the body's energy, it was limited. The maximum limit was 200. On the other hand, the internal spiritual energy was of the mind. It had no limit. It could be increased up to infinite levels. Training the internal energy had a positive impact on the external strength too, but more importantly, it was the major source of martial arts skills, light and magic. Chen was keenly listening to his father. He was trying to grasp the concept to the fullest. As far as he understood, a knight who trained his inner spiritual energy could master martial arts skills and holy light magic. He was a sharp kid, and he understood the whole idea pretty well. For the next 2 years, the main focus was to cultivate the inner spiritual energy. Apart from that, learning the secrets of spiritual stoves and practicing to maximize the external energy was also part of the lessons. He was pretty thrilled to embark on the new course of training. Cultivating inner energy seemed an interesting thing to do. He was really looking forward to it. However, it was all going to take place gradually over the next 2 years. For the time being, Yu said that it was time to complete the most solemn ceremony for a knight, the Sacred Awakening. For that purpose, he asked him to bring the Awakening Stone from Hao Yue. He asked Chen to fetch the stone so that the ceremony could proceed. Chen rushed back home, brought the Awakening Stone, and presented it to his father. As soon as it touched Yu's hand, it shone brightly, giving off its long rays in all directions. The luminosity was so intense that Chen couldn't stand its glaze. Yu calmed him down and said that it was a bright blessing. It was a high-ranked defensive skill used by high-ranked knights. For the ceremony to begin, Chen was instructed to close his eyes and stay focused. Regardless of what he felt and sensed, he was asked to stay calm and content. While staying calm, he was to feel the changes taking place in his body and try to comprehend the light. As Chen tried to focus on the light, its luminosity increased even further and swirled around his heart. Slowly and slowly, the gleaming glaze turned into an agonizing torment. It was burdening him with its heaviness. He clenched his fists as he endured the intense pain. The pain kept on increasing with each passing second. It became so intense that he started screaming. Yu was feeling discomfort as he saw his son in pain, but it was all for his betterment. Going through the sacred awakening before reaching the peak spiritual energy of a standard knight resulted in far greater pain than usual, but it guaranteed that Chen would develop his greatest potential. After a certain amount of time had passed, Yu cast a magic spell and swooshed a ball of divine energy towards Chen. As the ball bumped his heart, it suddenly turned into a light bar sign displaying some arbitrary numbers. The light bar indicated the quantity of inner spiritual energy. It determined his future potential to use that holy attribute. Initially, the sign read 12, but the numbers kept on increasing. Within no time, it reached 42. A knight with an inner spiritual energy number beyond 40 was considered by the Knight's Temple as a rare genius. The fluctuation of numbers continued. The signboard kept on raising the numbers. It increased up to 60. That was incredible. There was still no sign of stopping. The signboard had exceeded 60. It showed 67 after a few seconds. You couldn't believe his eyes. He himself was once hailed as the greatest genius of the century in the Knight's Temple with a score of 76. It seemed as if his record was going to be broken by his own son as the light bar continued to rise. If his innate inner spiritual energy crossed the mark of 70, then his ability to use holy magic would equal any light element mages. It might not have even been a split second when the light bar crossed 70. After 70, Chen released his fists. His pain had drastically reduced. He felt as if he had reconnected with the world. The torment turned into peace within just a moment. However, the signboard still didn't stop. It continued to rise at an ever-increasing speed. Within the blink of an eye, it had risen to 81. What an unbelievable sight it was. Yu's eyes were left wide open. In the entire history of the Knight's Temple, there had been only 3 instances of innate spiritual energy higher than 80. Out of those 3, only one had managed to successfully rise up. At the age of 36, that person attained divine achievement. The surprise wasn't over yet because the spiritual energy had still not stopped rising. To Yu's utmost astonishment, the light bar raised beyond 90. It was unperceivable. It had never happened before in the history of the Knight's Temple. After continuously rushing through the numbers, the light bar eventually stopped at 97. That was a highly unexpected score. In the temple's past records written by the ancestors, a physique with innate inner spiritual energy beyond 90 was known as the Scion of Light. Did his son just turn out to be a Scion of Light? How unexpected it was. He had never imagined his son to be that powerful to break all records of the temple. As the numbers stopped rising, the light bar sign disappeared. The stone's radiance still surrounded Chen. His eyes turned into a beautiful golden shade, and he felt deeply nourished by the warmth and coziness of the gleam. There was not a single nerve transmitting pain in his body. It was all so comfortable for him. That pure little soul had no idea what had just happened. He didn't have the slightest idea about him being a Scion of Light. While his father gazed at him in amazement, he was befogged. He asked his father why he seemed so surprised and shocked. Yu couldn't stop but stare at his son's magnificence. His body was shining bright, as if an additional layer of gold was covering his skin. The golden eyes were proof of the heroicness which was hidden in his personality. There wasn't as much of a holy atmosphere attracted by his body, unlike other knights after their sacred awakening. It seemed as if he had attracted all the holy atmosphere of that awakening stone. Not even a slight amount was spilled. Mesmerized by his greatness, he hugged his son tightly. He was so excited and proud to be a father to such a majestic son. It all seemed wonderful. Now that the sacred awakening had been completed, he was upgraded to the rank of a genuine knight. For that purpose, Yu gifted him a new set of knight's attire, which was slightly bigger than his size but would soon fit perfectly. As far as Chen's exceptionally high innate energy was concerned, he had no idea about it. His father also kept silent on that matter for the time being. He didn't consider it the right time to tell him about it. He just told him that a good innate energy was beyond 20, and according to that judgment, his energy was pretty good. However, in order to prevent him from becoming lousy, Yu told him that the high energy was merely the result of the sacred awakening. For that purpose, it was imperative for him to practice harder to reach subsequent levels. Chen couldn't deny his father's words, so he promised to work harder to meet his expectations. Getting over the innate spiritual energy, Yu asked Chen about his decision regarding the field of operation he wanted to pursue. A year back, he was given 2 career options. He could choose to become a guardian knight or a retribution knight. Since Chen was given a year to think about it, it was finally time to give his final verdict. Surprisingly, Chen didn't hesitate even slightly before answering. He confidently answered that he wanted to become a guardian knight. However, Chen's answer was quite shocking for Yu. He didn't want his son to give up his formidable attack power and combat effectiveness of the retribution knights. His apprehensiveness was justified, but Chen had a clever explanation for his choice. Yu had once taught him during a lecture that to be a match against the demon race, they needed the power of humanity as a whole. The power of a single person was insufficient to fight against the mighty evils. For that reason, Chen wanted to become a guardian knight so that his power could be added to that of the other knights. They would be able to protect their people better if they unified their strengths. Though his perspective was noble, Yu didn't seem to be happy with it because, ultimately, the greatest human force alone would be required to battle the 72 evil demons. The combined power of guardian knights couldn't make it up to that level to fight the demons. He didn't understand how a Scion of Light could be so stupid. There was sufficient mental capacity to support him, but he still couldn't understand the diplomatic things. By becoming a guardian knight, he would waste the exceptionally high spirit he was gifted. In order to save him from that stupidity, he told him to train in both specializations. In that way, he would bring out the most of his innate potential. It was pretty simple for him to say it because he was aware of the background story going on, but for Chen, the statement was a huge blow. He couldn't even think of doing such a thing. It wouldn't make sense at all to train the skills and abilities of a retribution knight and a guardian knight at the same time. Despite his hesitation, Yu insisted on training him in both majors. For the following 2 years, his father was to train him as a retribution knight. After mastering the skills of retribution, he could leave for the Hao Yue Temple to train as a guardian knight. As long as he trained in both, he could become a formidable knight without precedence in history. He somehow managed to convince Chen by narrating the pros of the decision. Just like that, several days passed by. His father used to train him daily at the Odin Mountain Peak. He worked hard day and night to accomplish his dream of becoming a strong and powerful knight. Everything was going so smoothly, just as per the planning. About a year and a half had passed by in the hustle and bustle of the practice. Chen had grown into a handsome young man. His body also got sturdier and more muscular. Almost all his skills had been polished to a great extent. One day, in the scorching heat of midday, the father and son duo were practicing outside. Chen was being taught the shining sunlight skill. As expected, he had done a pretty good job in grasping the technique of the skill. With limited training, he was already at his peak mastery level. The only issue was that it slightly lacked heat and spiritual energy. Chen was so happy that his father appreciated him. At that time, his inner spiritual energy was at level 120, while the external spiritual power was at 200. He was a 4th-rank knight. Despite a total spiritual energy of 320, he lacked energy for the Shining Sunlight skill because it consumed almost 50 of the total units. Taking out 50 units from his energy reserves left him with insufficient units to sustain himself. His father explained to him that it was all natural. That skill wasn't a piece of cake. Even the strongest knights yearned to master it to the fullest. Being impatient wasn't the key to accomplishing success. The step-by-step progress called for extreme patience. He ordered him to get ready and start practicing all over with a new motivation. Chen calmed himself down and geared up to begin the practice. Yu began swirling his bamboo sword swiftly in the air. Chen had to counteract the effect of the bamboo sword's speed with his own sword. He picked up his sword and plunged it towards his father. Within just a second, he managed to halt the bamboo sword swirling. The moment both the swords met at their tips, Yu smiled at him. He couldn't feel any prouder of his son for the spectacular performance. He appreciated his efforts. Their daily grind wasn't going to waste. He could already visualize the effect of tough training in Chen's moves. After an afternoon of intense combat, it was finally time for a lunch break. Chen's mother was awaiting them at a lavish homemade lunch. They walked back home, excited for the meal. Yu wrapped his arms around Chen's shoulders. He couldn't be any happier. Despite the painstaking daily training, the previous year was the best time of Chen's life. There used to be a warm smile on his mother's face all the time, and his father used to shower love on him. He wanted that time to last forever. While they headed home hand in hand, Chen asked his father to tell him a story of the 72 demons. He seemed eager to know more about them. However, it appeared as if his father was offended by hearing the name of the demons because he paused his steps as soon as he heard it. All of a sudden, his eyes started emitting a strange gleam. Something was fishy. He gave Chen an intense, cold stare. Poor little kid was worried to see his father's strange behavior. Adding to his terror, Yu started lifting his feet from the ground. Out of the blue, his feet rose too high that he began flying. Chen had no idea what was going on. He didn't even imagine that a knight could fly. Was his father only relying on his spiritual energy to fly? What on earth suddenly happened? Yu's gaze became stern. He was giving off a completely different strong coercion. When the little soul couldn't bear it anymore, he gathered the courage to ask his father about the whole situation. Perhaps a misfortune might have occurred in Odin Town, which caused his father to be tense. Well, his perception was correct. His father told him that the Odin Town was in danger. The devil race troops had invaded their town. They didn't have enough time. If they wanted to shield their beloved town, then they had to reach the battlefront immediately. To fight away the evils, Yu summoned his spiritual energy to transform into huge wings that could fly him to the war zone. Chen was astounded to witness the colossal wings. What other wonders could his father do with his spiritual energy? While he was busy judging his greatness, Yu was boiling in the wrath of revenge. He vowed to himself that he wouldn't let the demons get away that easily. He spread his energy wings over Chen and flew him away to the main Odin town. The atmosphere in the central town was catastrophic. Fumes were coming out from all the buildings as if everything had been burnt down. All the trees were under fire. Their beautiful village had been destroyed entirely. That was not all to destruction. The whole town was filled with eerie and creepy creatures with weird bodies. The upper half of their bodies resemble wolves and dragons, and the lower part resemble humans. Their eyes were blazing red, and a sharp laser beam emitted. They were daunting creatures that couldn't be classified as a single type of species. The most strange thing was the swords which they held in their inhuman hands. Chen was bathing in cold sweat as he saw the ferocious creatures surrounding them from all directions. What exactly were they? He had never seen anything like that before. Probably they could be the demons. Not only was he puzzled, but Yu was too. He was familiar with the basic features of demons. He could somehow categorize those monstrous creatures as demons, but he didn't know that wolves were also from the demon race. Out of the blue, one of the terrifying demons approached them. Little Chen felt the agony his father was undergoing, so he thought of helping him with the fight. He wanted to go down and kill all of them, but Yu grasped his hand tightly and kept him back. Though he was confident and courageous, his strength was far from sufficient to combat the evils. It wasn't the time to act on impulse. Instead, they needed to take each step very carefully and wisely. Instructing him to stay back, Yu himself geared up to jump into the swarm of the monsters. Because Chen had always wanted to see his father's prowess, he asked him to take a good look and learn the strategy. He bid farewell to his son and hopped down by taking support from his huge wings. A while into his flying journey, the gleaming energy from which the wings were made started mingling up. The whole glow was distorted for a moment. A second later, the energy transformed into something highly unexpected with a loud bang. The light had formulated an enormous divine throne, onto which Yu was sitting like a king. It was the divine throne of doom and slaughter. The whole of Odin Town was perplexed and staggered at its appearance. Even the demons paused for a while to witness the glory of the throne. Chen was looking at his father from his safe spot, and he couldn't believe his eyes. It was unbelievable. How could someone possess that amount of power? Sitting on the throne, Yu called for judgment. Adding glory to his power, Yu unsheathed his glimmering and flickering mighty golden sword. Wickers of flame danced around the sword. Its majestic gleam showered its intense power on the wolves. The monsters lost all their energy as the rays touched them. As he swooshed the sword in the sky, the monsters started tripping down one by one. Within a split second, all the demons were wiped off from the horizon. There wasn't even a single trace of the werewolves. As soon as the last demon died, the blazing golden light radiating from Yu's weapon also disappeared. The Odin town regained its natural radiance. The vicious aura that was covering it had vanished. All the evilness in the sky had disappeared. Thousands of residents of the town who were scared to death by the demon attack now sighed in relief. The next moment, a highly warm and cozy light took over the horizon. The rays of the light were so nourishing and cozy that they healed all the wounded people of the town. The innocent kids who stood by their mothers were so happy to feel the warmth. Apart from those who had died in the ferocious attack, the wounded people slowly started getting up on their feet as their wounds healed. The fire that was burning the buildings lost its wrath and cooled down. All that was left as a sign of the disaster was the dead bodies and the broken houses. Everything else had turned calm and peaceful. The commoners of the town thought that a divine entity had come to save them. They were so happy that the wrecking attack was over. It all seemed like a nightmare to them. Little did they know that their protector was a man from among themselves. While it was tranquil on the land of the Odin town, the heavens from where Yu's mighty divine throne descended had turned into a prison cell for the demons. Yu had not revealed himself to the people down in the town. He struck all the demons from the heavens and imprisoned them in the chains of spiritual energy. He inquired them of their motive to invade and cause trouble in the southern part of the Temple Alliance. On the other side of the conversation was the leader of the werewolf race, a fifth-rank devil. He was terrified by the immense power of a divine knight who managed to kill their whole army within a single moment. Yu told them that he was in charge of adjudication and judgment, and as his prisoners, they were answerable to all his questions. The devil, though he was frightened to death internally, didn't let his terror overtake his confidence externally. He remained calm and collected in front of Yu and said that he wasn't afraid of a divine knight. The demon's divine master was soon to descend. He would make the humans perish and would avenge him. He said that he wouldn't answer any of his questions even if he was killed. Seeing the devil's rudeness, Yu decided to kill them all as it was of no use to imprison them for the sake of questioning. He blew all of them away with a single swoosh of his sword. Coming back to the survivors of the attack in Odin town, they had thrown themselves on their knees. They were highly grateful to the golden light from the sky, which healed their sore wounds. They didn't know who their protector was, but considered his act a noble and divine one. They were indebted to the one who saved their lives. Meanwhile, Chen was waiting for his father to return to the safe spot on a nearby cliff where he had asked him to stay. Soon, Yu returned back to that spot. Chen was too excited to meet his father and congratulate him on his achievement. The scene he just witnessed was truly shocking. He didn't expect his father to be a divine knight. It was a surprise to him. Yu told him that he was in charge of adjudication and judgment. However, during normal days at home, he was simply a father and a husband. Chen was way too impressed by him that day. He wondered if it was possible for him to become as formidable as his father through training. Yu counseled him that it was highly plausible for him to become a divine knight if he strived hard for it. He himself became one at the age of 47. As long as Chen worked hard, he could achieve that stage even earlier than his father. Chen promised that he would work hard to become as strong as his father one day. Getting over the praise, Yu began conversing about the devils and their attack. That attack indicated that the devil race couldn't stand boredom anymore. They wanted to spice up their lives, for which they might have planned much more than the attack that just commenced. Although the demons were way more powerful than the human race, he told Chen that they must not surrender at any cost. They were the only warriors and protectors that the humans looked up to. As knights, they were bound to protect their land until the very last moment. The discussion was an infinitely long one. They started walking back home while having the conversation. As they reached home, Yue was already outside, waiting for the safe return of her husband and child. She inquired about the attack, to which Yu replied that it was merely an exploratory attack. The strong devils had not appeared yet. They were expected to descend during subsequent attacks. Under those circumstances, they needed to leave for the Alliance earlier than the previously decided time. Yue tightly squeezed her husband's hand as she was in severe tension. Chen was standing right behind them. He overheard his father talking about leaving, so he asked if they would actually leave their home behind. Yu replied that the term "we" didn't include Chen. Chen was taken aback all of a sudden. Were his parents leaving him alone? How was he going to live all by himself? You explained to him that a kid who never left his parents' protection could never reach the heights of heaven. He had originally planned to train him for 3 years, but since the odd circumstances at the Alliance demanded his presence, the training was to end earlier. You needed to visit the Alliance along with his wife. That place wasn't meant for kids to visit. It was possible for him to take Chen along, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to become a divine knight then. He could only become one by gaining everything from his own hard work. By sustaining himself alone, he could acquire the honor of a divine knight. Realizing that he would really have to live alone, Chen started sniveling. He cried his heart out because he didn't want to part ways with his parents. He was living the happiest time of his life. You told him that kids who stay by their parents' side till the end would forever depend on them. They always end up missing them, even if they grow into adults. The option to take Chen along was still valid, but you had so many things to look after in the Alliance that he wouldn't be with his family even for a moment. For that reason, he made the decision to leave Chen back home. It was an extremely hard decision, but it was in his best interests. If it weren't for Chen's betterment, you would never have taken that step. His mother couldn't bear the sight of her son's pain. She ran away immediately to hide her outpouring tears. Since there was still some time before departure, you wanted to teach Chen some last skills to prepare him for the fortune that awaited him as a future divine knight. Chen was taken aback when he told him that he would demonstrate the spiritual stoves to him. His father had always been talking about spiritual stoves. Spiritual stoves were spiritual smelting furnaces. They were one of the most valuable treasures of nature. Each one of them had their unique properties. Even if different people practiced using the same stove, they would get different results. During the current century, there were a total of 74 spiritual stones, out of which only 23 were compatible with knights. Chen gained interest in the discussion as it slowly progressed. He asked his father where a spiritual stove could be found. He replied that the majority of those stones could be found in places where tons of spiritual energy was gathered. Another place where they could be found was the ancient ruins. Whichever vocation, only 1 in 1,000 knights possessed such a stone. Out of the blue, in between the discussion, you gave him a sealed ring as a gift. There were 6 layers of seals within it. You himself had sealed the various kinds of powerful skills used by Retribution Knights into the ring. Majorly, skills from 4th to 9th rank were included in it. It was a unique gift that could prove to be highly valuable for Chen. For every rank his spiritual energy reached, he would be able to break through a part of the seal and study the details included in it one by one. In addition to the special ring, he handed over to him an old rusty book, too. It included all the important details regarding the spiritual stoves. He had collected them during the time he was learning about them, and now it was his son's turn to carry on his legacy. The moment was pretty emotional for both the father and son. Chen regarded those things as parting gifts. It made him teary-eyed to even think of being separated from his dearest family. You told him to keep the gift safe in his Forget-Me-Not ring. The Forget-Me-Not ring was a specialized storage ring that could store any article of sizes up to 10 cubic meters. It contained a defensive ability, too. It was a quite rare magic accessory that could keep one's precious belongings safe. You had a lot more pretty good equipment, but he didn't plan on giving it away to his son. He wanted him to gain all that equipment with his own strength. It seemed as if Chen didn't have the slightest of interest in the belongings. All he could think of was the tragic separation from his parents. It was very difficult for him to keep back his emotions. He awaited a miracle to occur that could make his parents stay. You hugged him tightly. He knew that it was too hard for such a little child to stay away from his parents. He told Chen that his emotions were his strength, but if he kept on behaving like that, then they would turn into his biggest weakness. If he wanted to become a powerful divine knight, then enduring that pain was only the first step toward his goal. He instructed him to remain vigilant and alert while alone at home and avoid talking to strangers while they were away. When Chen didn't stop crying even after a long lecture of counseling, he told him that it was merely a temporary separation. They weren't leaving for good. As soon as the war ended, they would return and continue with their merry life. He bucked Chen up by saying that he wanted to see him with a new sight after returning. To make the child happy, you told him that he had another special gift for him too. He had been working on its preparation for too long. Before he took out the gift from his pocket, Chen's eyes glared up with curiosity and inquisitiveness. He was hooked by surprise. Ending the curiosity soon, he revealed the gift. It was a small golden stove with radiant luminosity emitting from the whole of its surface. He revealed that it was the majestic Saint Spiritual Stove. Chen was shocked to see its radiance and divinity. It was such a precious gift which filled his heart with awe. He wondered how many spiritual stoves a person could fuse with. In theory, there were no restrictions to it. But spiritual stoves could easily conflict among themselves. The fuser could most probably die if a conflict ever occurred. The present record was of fusing 5 stoves together. You said that he had personally fused 3. Though fusion seemed to be appealing, it wasn't necessary to fuse with more of the stones. The better option was to evolve the spiritual stones. The greater the number of times it evolved, the greater its power. After explaining the entire concept of spiritual stoves, Yu said that he had done his part. He had already explained to Chen what was necessary. As far as his mother's advice was concerned, she was worried about his health, so she strictly advised him not to compromise over it. Since it was the end of the counseling and advising session, Yu patted Chen's shoulder and swooshed the spiritual stove towards him. The immensely bright, warm light that radiated from it gave him a cozy feeling initially. Still, as soon as it penetrated his chest, the coziness turned into a painful torment. It was so painful that he screamed at the top of his throat, and he couldn't even move from his sight. He felt as if an iron skewer had penetrated his heart. As the golden gleam entered through his heart, it spread to each and every corner of the body, including the cerebrum. The rays didn't include warmth. Instead, they were supplemented with countless mysterious energies that were transfused into his mind. Hearing his shriek, Chen's mother came running all the way from home to inquire about his safety. She got even more worried about his health. Though Yu tried to calm her down that the shriek was nothing but energy supplementation, she was reluctant to leave him alone. He had never left her side since he was young. His father, though deeply aggrieved, was confident, in fact, that Chen could take good care of himself. He had already made all the necessary arrangements. He wanted his son to spread his wings and freely soar in the sky. He had almost succeeded in convincing Chen to stay back alone, but the kid got emotional once again after seeing his mother crying for him. He asked his dad if it was possible for the whole family to stay back, but he refused. Yu said that he had waited too long for the opportunity to battle with Anan. If he could make his enemy fall, it would be a favor for the whole of mankind from his side. He was going to put in all his efforts in the battle, but because he was a father and a husband in addition to being a knight, he promised to return alive for the sake of his family. Just like that, the last few precious moments of Chen with his family eventually come to an end. It was time for his parents to leave. In spite of him begging them to stay, they couldn't stay. Burying the grief within their hearts, they left for the Temple Alliance. Chen yelled and cried his heart out, but no one was there to listen to his cries. He was left all alone. He had to live by himself for an unspecified amount of time. He banged his hands forcefully on the floor to let out the tension. It just didn't seem real. How could his beloved mother leave him all alone? Was it a dream? He considered himself worthy enough to be taken along. Even if he remained by his father's side, he wouldn't have stopped putting in effort. He was a hard-working boy who would always strive for the best no matter what the circumstances. It seemed like yesterday when he reunited with his father. Their family used to be such a merry one. He cherished all those moments to the fullest. Why did happy times always have to be so brief? While sniveling and wailing, his gaze was coincidentally caught by a letter on the table beside him. He gathered the courage to stand up and fetch the letter. It was a pretty long one. As he opened it, he came to know that it was written for him by his father. In that letter, Yu had explained to his son that parting ways with one's family was a part of life and was temporary. Chen was already a teenager. He had to stand on his own strength in order to flourish as a knight. The only thing he could rely on in his future was his personal strength. Merely for the sake of polishing his strengths and skills, his father had left him alone. In the letter, he instructed him to leave for Haoyue City as soon as he read it. Chen was ordered by his father to learn the skills of guardian knights at the Haoyue branch of the temple. Within that temple, he wasn't allowed to reveal his identity as both a guardian and a retribution knight to anyone, unless absolutely necessary. Master Naylan Shu was the only trustworthy man from whom he was allowed to ask for guidance. Yu wrote that he had already informed Naylan about Chen by sending him a letter. Before leaving for the sacred mountain to get his mount, Yu instructed Chen to learn all the skills of a guardian knight from the 1st to the 4th rank. Regarding spiritual communication in the sacred mountain, if he couldn't resist the aura emanating from the strong beasts, he would be unable to find a suitable mount to be a companion. Studying the abilities of guardian knights could also help to increase his survival chances in the future. Yu wrote that he should unceasingly train with the instructions related to spiritual stoves. After owning a spiritual stove, it would turn into an intermediary for the practice of his internal energy. By virtue of that practice, his training potential would substantially be raised. The Saint Spiritual Stove which he gifted him was specifically designed to be used by guardian knights. Yu hoped that he would have fun practicing and experiencing its energy. At the end of the letter, Yu expressed his deep condolences to Chen for being left alone. He wrote that it wasn't easy for them as parents to leave their children alone. He wished him good luck, and hoped that on their next meeting, Chen would be a strong man with outstanding abilities. Below the good wishes, a small warning was written too. Unless he was able to reach the 7th rank as a knight of the temple, pass the examination and get the Silver Foundation warrior armor. His father threatened him not to go around looking for them. That was all from the letter that his father had kept on the table for him to read. As Chen was done reading the letter, he burst into tears. He was badly missing his parents. He cried and called his mother and father, but they had already left. The crying session, however, didn't last long. He was a strong and confident boy who knew how to take care of himself well. He acted as per his father's instructions and packed his stuff to leave for Haoyue City. Without wasting any time at home, he took off on the journey. As soon as he reached there, he encountered his elder sister Shin. She was so glad to see him after such a long time. Almost 2 years had passed by since they last met. She was so happy to see that he had grown into a handsome man. She hugged him tightly because she had been missing him badly. While they met with such informality, the passers-by on the streets of Haoyue City were jealous of Chen. They were unaware of the history between the two. For them, he was a handsome young man with whom the beautiful and charming lady of their temple was so frank. Chen got so emotional after meeting the elder sister. The wounds in his heart caused by being left alone got sore again. Tears popped up into his eyes. Shin instantly picked the hint. She knew something was wrong with him. Upon being questioned, Chen replied that his parents had left him alone, which caused him to be extremely downcasted. For a moment, Shin was bewildered. She couldn't believe what she just heard. She thought his parents had left him all by himself during the ferocious devil attack. Chen calmed her down and clarified himself by saying that his parents had left him after the attack only to join the temple for training. After hearing the reality, she regained her lost senses and calmed down. After getting an insight into the whole matter, she didn't find anything unusual in it. They simply went on a journey from which they would return soon. According to her preferences, she would have chosen to remain separated from her parents. However, because he was smaller in age than her, she understood his affiliation and emotional connection with his parents. She counseled him that it was just a normal part of life, and from then onwards, the temple would be his home. In her presence, no one could dare to bully her junior brother. She held his hand and walked him inside the temple. The way she chatted with him all through the way long, it was evident that she had been missing him, and was impressed by his even more captivating appearance. She wondered how many hearts of young ladies he might have captured by his handsomeness. While they walked through the corridors of the building, they happened to pass by the divine throne of doom and slaughter. Chen instantly recognized that throne. It was his father's glory. He thrived to possess that divine throne one day with his own hard work. He paused by the throne to cherish its glory and magnificence. Meanwhile, Shin ogled at him and admired his beauty. Just within 2 years, he had grown much taller, and his face appeared tougher. His beauty made her heart race, but she got over her feelings because he was 8 years younger than him. He was her younger brother. All of a sudden, she noticed something unusual in his eyes. As far as she remembered, his eyes were of a dark blue shade from when they had previously met. Why had they turned gold? Chen revealed that the color changed when his father helped him with the sacred awakening. She was still surprised. She had never heard of changing the eye color with sacred awakening. Just out of curiosity, she asked her about his innate inner spiritual energy, to which he replied that he wasn't allowed to reveal that information as per his father's orders. Shin could make him spit out the facts, but she didn't bother to do so. No matter what, that kid was already astounding at the age of 12. It was obvious that his energy was going to be high. In between their discussion, Master Naylan appeared suddenly. He was surprised to see Chen back after such a long time. After greeting Chen, he asked him in code words if it was his father who had appeared during that incident that day. Before he could even complete his sentence, Chen nodded because he somehow puzzled it out, that he wanted to ask if his father had fought the demon race the other day. Naylan seemed to be so thrilled. He said that he had a strong feeling that it could be no one else but Chen's father. Shin was pissed off by their secret conversation. She felt offended as she was left out. She asked Master Naylan to be let in, but he rebuked her and asked her to leave for the training as the devil hunting team selection was just around the corner. She left grumpily as the master wasn't ready to tell her anything. However, she couldn't keep the happiness of Chen returning, so she offered him a lavish dinner treat. As she left, Naylan began discussing the devil attack with Chen. He was so proud of his father. With just a single move from the bearer of the divine throne of doom and slaughter, the 5 army forces of the devil race simply fled from the Alliance's border. The plan of the devil army was crippled entirely. Naylan was so impressed by Lord Xingyu, he begged Chen to let him meet with him as he was his loyal fan. Chen handed him over the letter that his father had left. Naylan read the letter with great love because it was from his ideal personality. As he read it till the end, he got a little confused. Why did the Great Lord want his son to learn guardian skills from him? It seemed a little jumbled up as he was the #1 retribution knight and could efficiently teach his son all the skills himself. Chen remained silent on the matter because his father forbade him from speaking much. He politely apologized to Naylan that he wasn't allowed to reveal deeper details. Naylan understood his stance and said that he couldn't go against Xingyu's orders, so he would do everything possible to groom Chen. From then onwards, Chen was enrolled as an official member of the Haoyue branch temple. In the letter, Yu also ordered Chen to participate in the devil hunting team selection. Naylan made preparations for that too, but before anything else, he brought him to familiarize himself with the temple's environment. He also arranged for him to live there. Coincidentally, his place was right next to the elder sister Shin's place. After the initial orientation, he was taken to the spiritual energy testing room to take the entrance exam to become a guardian knight. Shin was also with him. She was shocked to know that Chen had changed his major field from being a retribution knight to a guardian knight. When he previously took the test, he opted for retribution training. He couldn't reveal the true reason that he was training in both fields. Thus, he simply said that he had changed his mind just the last year. Master Naylan explained the necessary instructions for the exam and ordered him to begin with it. Chen gazed sharply with his golden eyes at the huge stone which was to be struck. He gathered all his strength at the tip of his sword and smashed it straight onto the energy testing machine. The machine took some time to assemble the results. A few seconds later, it displayed the final results. To everyone's utmost astonishment, Chen's spiritual energy was exceptionally high. It was at level 268. It was only 2 levels away from that of a third-rank knight. Sister Shin was staggered to know that a mere 12-year-old boy was almost a third-rank knight. Master Naylan was highly impressed by his spectacular talent. It was slightly more than double the value a year or 2 years back. It was highly surprising for both of them. However, they were unaware of the fact that after fusing with the saint's spiritual stove, his inner spiritual energy had dropped by 50 levels. If it had not dropped, then his current spiritual energy would have equaled that of a 4th-rank knight. Getting done with the exam, it was almost evening, so everyone was preparing for dinner. As Shin had promised Chen a feast, she took him to the dining room and ordered a lavish meal of more than 20 dishes. When the waiters began serving the dishes one by one, the whole table was filled within a minute. Chen wondered how he would eat all the food. It would all go to waste as he didn't have as much of an appetite. The elder sister said that he needed more food because he was still growing. Out of the blue, a young and beautiful female entered the dining room. She had overheard Shin trying to make Chen eat more, and criticized her that she was the biggest eater herself. As the lady approached nearer, the badge on her shoulder became visible. She was wearing the badge of a 6th-rank mage. She was genuinely a mage. Her name was Lin Hualu. Chen had never met a mage before. He was in awe to see her. Meanwhile, Shin was vexed with her. She was offended by being called a big eater. The quarrel among them slowly became more furious. They were almost about to end in a fight, but the manager came around and issued them a warning. The last time the two of them fought with each other, they were punished by the head officer and the minister. But still, they didn't learn a lesson. However, his warning further intensified the situation, as both the ladies recalled their previous fight. Jin said that she would have won that fight if her father and Uncle Lin didn't stop her, whereas Hua claimed that she would have won the fight if her parents had arrived to protect her. It seemed as if their enmity extended far back into history. They frequently ended up in a hot-headed squabble after randomly encountering each other. The current encounter was similar to the usual ones. Eventually, it was decided that they would go outside for a proper brawl. However, the fight was based on the condition that Shin wouldn't be allowed to summon her unicorn, and Hua wouldn't be allowed to use any kind of magic. They had agreed to exchange blows without any external aid. Just when they were about to leave the dining hall, the manager once again came up to them and issued a strong warning of charging them with detentions as per the head officer and minister's instructions. Since that was a serious punishment, they got scared and backed off. However, none of them were ready to accept the fact that the other one was superior to them. They had to settle that issue no matter what. Because fighting wasn't possible, Shin came up with another idea. She challenged Hua to make a bet with her. The bet was simple. The head officer forbade them from fighting with each other, but there was no restriction on fighting among other members of the temple. For that reason, she bet on her little brother Chen to fight for her, and asked Yua to come up with a fighter from her side. Both the participants would fight each other on their behalf. As long as the two ladies themselves didn't indulge in brawls, it wouldn't be an issue for the seniors. The idea was pretty genius, and Hua acknowledged it. However, she was surprised as Shin pointed towards her little brother because she had not noticed him when she came inside. She found him pretty handsome and beautiful. Though she was impressed by his beauty, she doubted him to be a girl dressed in a boy's attire. Since he was Shin's younger brother, it could be pretty plausible because she herself used to dress like boys when she was younger. Chen banged his head with his palm again. Why did everyone mistook him for a girl? He even had an Adam's apple. Still, everyone couldn't discern his masculinity. In addition to appearing feminine, Chen appeared really young in age. The crowd in the dining room thought Shin had made a mistake by betting on him because he was a small kid. How could such a young teenager fight? Their concerns were justified, but Shin wasn't bothered at all because she had already witnessed Chen's extraordinary power. She acted naive in front of everyone and told Hua that her brother had just joined the temple today. Chua took Chen too easy because she considered him just a small kid who had no prior fighting experience. To fight on her behalf, she chose Xu Tiankong, an average fighter from her guild. As both the contestants were selected, it was time to settle on a wager. Shin said that she wanted to bet the divine magic crystal from the light element 5th-ranked beast elegant gold tiger against the radiant shield from the mage business. She knew that Chen was going to win the fight at any cost. That's why she bet on the most precious thing she had. Jua, who had no idea of Chen's strength, was mad to see her waging on the top-grade 5th-ranked magical crystal. She couldn't connect the dots behind Shin's planning, but since it was a matter of respect and ego, she agreed to it. After deciding all the rules, they headed outside to begin the fight. Shin apologized to Chen for making him fight before he could even have his first meal at the temple. She said that there was strong and valid reasoning behind all the planning. Thus, he had to win the battle. Chen was a polite boy who always respected his seniors. Thus, he obeyed his elder sister without any questioning. He promised to give his best to win the bet. Meanwhile, Hua was also having a last-minute discussion with her mate. She somehow got the hint that Chen had some high skills, but she counseled Tian to try his best to win. As a reward, she promised him a new sword. Though she wanted to win the battle at any cost, she instructed Tian not to hurt Chen intentionally because he was just a small kid who was bound to obey his senior's orders. A few moments later, both the ladies sent their brothers in for the fight. As Chen walked towards the battleground, he wondered what the tension between both the elder sisters could be about. Apparently, they seemed intense rivals of each other, but both of them had a sense of proportion in their speeches. It seemed as if they weren't real enemies. The hatred was merely superficial. All of a sudden, an unusual idea popped up in his mind. He paused his steps and asked the opponent to wait too. Out of the blue, he walked towards Yua and asked for her guidance as he was about to fight a mage. His request for guidance took aback both the ladies. Was he indirectly trying to say that he wanted to fight Yua instead of Tian? Hua said that if that was the case, then he would definitely lose the bet. Shin was shocked too. How could he request to fight a 3rd-level 6th-rank mage? She tried elucidating to him that it could lead to a disgraceful failure, but he kept on insisting. He quoted his father's explanation that first-hand experiences were more important than any training. To assess his true skills, he wanted to fight a genuine mage. That little boy surely had some guts. Shin was impressed by his confidence. She trusted him with his power and skills, thus allowing him to go for the fight. Deep down, she was excited for him to beat Hua because she knew he could do it. Meanwhile, Hua was relieved because she thought she would easily drive him away. She invited him to step forward into the battleground so that he could taste the prowess of a true mage. Now, both the contestants were standing opposite to each other. Both of them were extremely confident in their skills and power and stared coldly into each other's eyes. Because Hua was senior, she took advantage of her status to initiate the fight with an impactful magical spell. She swooshed a chilly ice mantle towards him to halt his speed. Within a moment, the ice turned into thorns. If he stepped on it, he would lose his speed and efficacy. Little did she know that the handsome lad had many ways to deal with her magical tricks. He used his inner spiritual energy to break through the thorns. He counteracted and blocked her magic with just a single splash of his spiritual energy. Judging by his spiritual strength, Yua realized that the boy whom she considered a naive little kid with no experience was actually a 3rd-ranked knight. It was almost impossible for the reality to turn out as such. She was totally taken aback. Her ice mantle slowly shattered and eventually crumbled into hundreds of tiny pieces. Chen was thrilled to see the mantle cracking down. His first experience of fighting a mage was pretty adventurous. He was enjoying it so far until Hua got up again and geared up for a second attack. For the second round, she was more cautious. She quickly cast a spell, and her exceptionally high energy transformed into an ever-growing ring of chilly air surrounding her. The ring flourished and advanced towards Chen. That attack was definitely praiseworthy. It was a nail-biting moment for Shin as she got apprehensive about Chen's victory. That enemy of hers was truly a magic genius because she cast such a powerful spell without even having a wand in her hand. If the ring contacted Chen, his combat abilities would be greatly reduced. Shin was worried that Hua might beat him up before he was able to break through. Her concerns didn't seem to be far from reality, as Chen actually felt his spiritual energy slowing down due to the chill. Hua was finally at peace now that she had managed to slow down Chen's energy. Shin's trick of sending over a 3rd-ranked knight to fight her had almost gotten her. If Tian had been to fight Chen, he would probably have been no match against him. Chen was befogged by the sudden blow he received. His brain had almost stopped working. He couldn't plan his next move. Seeing the chilly ring getting nearer and nearer, he hopped over the chilly part and entered the inside of the ring. That was where he made a mistake. Shin yelled out loud that it was Hua's trap. She tricked him into jumping into the circle so that she could attack him easily. It was evident from his stupid move that he had no experience of fighting with a mage. Shin was right. It was Hua's trap. As soon as he entered the circle, she plunged ice balls towards him. She told Chen to consider the ice balls her mercy because she could have used the ice cones, which could have caused some serious injuries to him. Chen was perplexed as soon as he realized his mistake, but he remained calm and confident, just as his father had taught him. Thanks to the calmness, he was able to think of a counteracting move before any of the ice balls could collide with him. He lifted his sword high in the sky and swiftly cut it through the chilled ring to break through it. He had just executed a third-rank knight's unique skill, the lightning cut. The ring rumbled and crackled but didn't break. Hua had also managed to save herself from the attack, but the fight wasn't over yet. She was blown away by the sudden attack from Chen, but luckily was able to counteract it. It was now obvious to her that she underestimated him. However, she was aware that the lightning cut skill used up 50 units of spiritual energy. As per her calculations, Chen wouldn't have much energy remaining. Under that illusion, she still considered herself holding the winning ticket. Even Jin lost all hope for Chen's victory. It was quite evident from the situation that Yua would win the bet. She had mentally prepared herself to be the defeated one. Jua was lost in her near-victory celebrations. She didn't realize that the fight wasn't over yet. There was still more to come from Chen's side. Her mind was blown away when Chen used his sword to suddenly crackle the whole ring into thousands of pieces by using divine obstruction. Breaking the ring, he came up to Yua and asked her to give in as he successfully counteracted her magic. It was a moment of pin-drop silence. Nobody uttered a word because they couldn't digest the reality. It all seemed impossible. What on earth just happened? When did the situation turn around? Shin was in shock. Meanwhile, Yua's puzzlement was boundless. Her brain was stuck. Why wasn't Chen pushed back by her ice ring? Even fourth-ranked professionals would be temporarily pushed back. He was still a third-ranked one. He should have been pushed back. While everyone else was busy trying to get to the root of the incident, Jin's expressions enlightened. She grasped the whole concept behind Chen's attack and realized that he used divine obstruction to break the ring. She had noticed a pale gold-colored light emitted from Chen's body when the ring struck his body. It was an indication of divinity in his body. By using the divine obstruction, he was able to resist the ice ring and thus wasn't pushed back by it. It seemed as if Hua had not paid enough attention to him. Chen was too young to fight against a 6th-ranked mage, but the divine obstruction, coupled with his guardian skills, he won the contest. Though Shin understood the whole incident, she didn't reveal the reality to anyone else. She blamed Hua for her ignorance and abashed her for being defeated by her little brother. Since Hua had lost the fight, Shin asked her to bring out the bet on which they had decided earlier. Hua's mental condition at that moment wasn't stable enough to squabble with her rival. She said that she would have someone bring the bet to her later and stomped away angrily. As she went away, Jin congratulated Chen on winning the fight and expressed her happiness by hugging him tightly. They then went back to the dining hall to continue with the delicious dinner that awaited them. Shin was so happy that day that she ate to a full stomach, ignoring the fact that she had a high tendency to put on weight. In fact, both of them enjoyed the food to the fullest because they were growling with hunger after the intense battle. Within just a few moments, all the plates were empty. Getting done with dinner, Chen mustered up the courage to ask the elder sister about her enmity with Jua. Shin expressed that she didn't want to talk about it. Still, because her mood was extremely good, she chose to speak superficially about that topic. Both the girls used to be best buddies since childhood. Just 5 years back, when they were teenagers, they fell for the same boy at the same time. When Shin found out that Chua liked that boy as well, she was prepared to give up on him. However, that boy casually showed up to Shin. He told her how Hua had been using her familial influence to keep him inclined toward her. Since then, that boy had gone missing. When Shin went to ask Hua about the whole matter, she got angry and called her a liar and despicable and all sorts of bad things. The more they said, the angrier they got, and eventually they ended up in a huge fight. From that day onwards, they became rivals. After hearing the whole story, Chen concluded that it could have been a misunderstanding which could be solved by talking it out. However, Jin wasn't ready to settle on the communication method. She believed that there was nothing to talk about since that guy had already left. In fact, she didn't even want to talk about it anymore because every single word about that incident was hurting and annoying her. Her mood was too good to be destroyed by her enemies. She wanted to enjoy the happiness of winning the bet. Though Hua was a rival to her, Shin acknowledged the fact that she lived up to her words and would give them the Radiant Shield without being overly cranky about it. She randomly told Chen that he would be able to use the Radiant Shield up to the 5th rank easily. Chen paused for a moment. What was the elder sister trying to say? Was she giving the Radiant Shield to him? Seeing his inquisitive expression, she quickly cleared the confusion that she had bet on the shield to give it to him, as it would improve his defensive potential by a huge margin. She wanted to gift that shield to him because he aspired to be a guardian knight, and guardian knights possess the best of the shields. Sadly, her father didn't give her enough pocket money. If she had her own money, she would have bought a nice shield for him, but because she was empty-handed, using that method was imperative. Chen's eyes sparkled with love as he realized that his elder sister was betting for his sake. He was such a sentimental little boy. Shin patted his head to make him feel at home, and then they headed towards the temple hall. Passing through the gate to the hall, they met a man whom Hua sent to deliver the radiant shield. Shin happily took her belongings from him. She was thrilled to imagine Jua being regretful for accepting the challenge. She showed the shield to Chen as it was meant for him. The unique quality of the radiant shield was that it could automatically defend against attacks with spiritual energy lower than 300. Furthermore, its defensive capability could be enhanced if infused with one's internal spiritual energy. There was a strange light aura radiating from the shield. Shin explained that it was used to protect the shield's owner against negative effects from most magic spells. Within the shield could also be found a harmony crystal, which had the function of repairing the damages. As long as there were no excessive damages to the shield, it could easily repair itself. It was an amazing shield. Perhaps it wasn't the best one under the 5th rank, but it was definitely a praiseworthy one due to its practicality. She carefully handed it over to Chen and asked him if he liked it. He replied that he loved the gift. Although he had won the shield himself, he expressed his gratitude to his elder sister for being so considerate of him. After gifting him his welcome gift, she came towards a more important topic, which was about the things he had to look out for while studying in their temple branch. While they walked around the hall, Chen felt immensely blessed to have such a kind and caring big sister. The warmth that she had in her attitude towards him made him feel at home. Her love made him grow over the wounds of being desolated in a new and unfamiliar city. A few minutes into the peaceful walk, they entered the Knight's Hall. It was the place where Chen received training as a guardian knight. The hall was pretty huge and well-equipped, but he sensed an issue with it. The other people who were there to attend the class seemed to be quite older than him. The problem was not only sensed by Chen, but the other members of the hall also felt the same. They were curious about a young boy joining them for training. Judging by the radiant shield that he owned, they thought he might be coming from a rich family. They pondered over all kinds of reasons to explain his presence in the hall, except for him being a real knight. One of them said that he might have bought his way into the temple. The other one said that he could be the instructor's relative. Chen was really embarrassed in front of them. Did he not look like a knight at all? The hustle and bustle of a small boy mistakenly entering the hall kept on growing. When more and more people became curious about it, they sent a senior representative from their side to inquire about him. He went up to Chen and told him that he had entered the wrong hall by mistake, as the Knight's Hall wasn't meant to be visited by kids. Chen cleared the misconception that he was a knight who was going to take part in the class. The senior was taken aback. He couldn't believe Chen and was about to question him further, but the instructor came all of a sudden and announced that the class was about to begin. The instructor appeared to be a really strict and harsh man. He couldn't bear any of the students disobeying him. When he announced the beginning of the class, Chen and the other boy were still standing at their spot. They had not lined up for the training. The instructor got offended by them not paying heed to his commandments and scolded them badly. He had already been informed that a newcomer was joining them for the class. He was also told that it was a small boy who was very genius and skillful. However, he wasn't bothered by any of his special qualifications. He might be a genius, but once in his class, he would be treated just as an ordinary knight. There wasn't any discrimination in his class. He called Chen over to meet him and warned him that if he couldn't perform up to his expectations, he would be kicked back to the standard knight's place. He was indeed a cruel man for behaving so coldly with a small child. However, his small discussion with Chen had made it clear to the rest of the class that Chen was really a true knight. After dealing with Chen, he began with the class. The first thing he did was to make everyone stand up in his honor. The lesson for that day was to teach the most important prospect of a knight, which was staying calm. It was quite ironic how he was teaching his class to stay calm while he himself couldn't remain calm for even a minute. His way of making his students memorize the lesson was quite harsh. He ordered them to put on their heavy equipment and run 50 laps around the training field while reciting the lesson. Now that Chen was a part of that class, he was given his set of heavy equipment too. It was a metal coverall that weighed many kilograms. Everyone except for Chen donned their coveralls and stood in the queue to start their 50 laps. The instructor counted down from 5 and rang the start bell. He also issued a warning that if anyone fell out, he would have to run 50 more laps. The good thing was that Chen wasn't in that race. The instructor had asked him to come to the battleground for something else. He wanted to test his strength and capabilities. He was given a chance to fight with the instructor. The task was to push him back with his attack. If he won, then he wouldn't have to run with the rest of the class. Chen sighed in relief because he trusted his combat abilities. Both of them stepped onto the battlefield. The instructor allowed Chen to take the initiative attack. Chen geared up and unsheathed his sword. For the initiative attack, he planned a thorny charge. As he swiftly rushed towards the instructor to execute the attack, he judged all his movements. The thorny charge was very standard. As far as the rhythm was concerned, it was excellent. He wasn't being reckless at all. However, as he completed the attack, the instructor got furious all of a sudden and declared his attempt trash. Chen's attack was easily blocked by him without using any skill or being pushed back, which explained his failure. It could have been even better. Despite being publicly declared as a failure, Chen didn't lose hope. He remained calm and collected. He requested the instructor for a second chance in his guidance. The instructor, Asura Ye, was startled at his request. Throughout the history of their temple, no one had ever had enough guts to go up against him for the second time. Moreover, he had also used the lightning thrust for thrusting and possessed a radiant defense shield. It was quite obvious that Asura was impressed with him. Deep down, he had already decided to give him a second chance, but since he had also asked for guidance, he went first with the explanation of his shortcomings. He asked Chen if he knew why his attack was blocked, to which he replied that his training experience was higher, due to which he efficiently counteracted it. The little boy's observation was correct. The major reason behind his failure was insufficient training. Asura was relying entirely on his spiritual energy to block his attack. He explained the trick for Chen's shortcomings coldly and sternly. On the battlefield, if one met a foe who was much more powerful than him, then he had to make sure to surpass his limits to make up for the gap. Defeating the opponent by hook or by crook was the key to success. Driving away the enemy was especially necessary to protect oneself. Chen keenly listened to whatever he explained. When he fully understood how to make up for his shortcomings, he again asked to be given another chance. Asura allowed him to go for it, and said that he would push back his attack with an even greater magnitude of spiritual energy. Now, both of them were once again standing opposite to each other on the battleground. Chen geared up to take the initiative attack. As the fight began, he jumped over the instructor's head to go to the other side. Asura was befuddled for a second. He thought he had made an error in the attack and had lost his balance. However, when he glanced into Chen's eyes while he was flying over his head, he realized that it couldn't be an error in the attack, because a person who made an error wouldn't give such firm expressions. When Chen landed behind him, Asura knew that his motive was something else. It was an attempt to attack him from his back. Still, because Asura was alert since the beginning, he was able to counteract it. Though Chen's attack didn't make him take a step back, he had succeeded in impressing the instructor. The third-rank Retribution Knight skill he had just used was phenomenal. Despite the fact that such attacks couldn't harm Asura due to his adequate training, the shield that he brought into the field received the Heavenly Battle Array's charge, and there was no way to stop it immediately. Asura managed to block that attack without being pushed back, but that was not all from Chen's side. He had prepared yet another impactful attack, the Shining Sunlight Cut. That was the strongest skill a fourth-rank knight could use. He executed it excellently, but that stubborn instructor was able to block the cut with just one hand. However, the good thing was that he had to take half a step back to counteract it, which meant that Chen had won the contest. For a moment, both of them remained silent. Chen was taken aback by Asura's skills and strength because he received and counteracted his attack so elegantly. Asura's mind was blown away by Chen's capabilities as he made him take a step back. While both contestants were silent, the crowd of students who had gathered around them was worried that Chen would be punished badly for standing against the instructor. A while later, Asura broke the ice by congratulating and praising Chen for winning the contest. He lost because he was tricked by his appearance, and he took him too easily. That was a fatal mistake. The little boy had taught him such a huge and important life lesson. He acknowledged his favor and thanked him for it. Chen also expressed his gratitude to him for his guidance. Meanwhile, the crowd of students went crazy. They couldn't believe their eyes and ears. Did Asura Ye just accept his failure? Was it a dream? An uproar emerged amongst them, which was silenced by Asura. He rebuked them for hanging around the battlefield when they were charged with a task to run 50 laps. For disobeying his orders, they were punished by running 50 more laps. As the crowd dismantled, the instructor asked Chen about his age. He was astonished to know that he was to turn 12 in the coming year. He was not even 12, yet he could use the Shining Sunlight Cut. If he could use the Sunlight Cut and the Heavenly Battle Array, then he must have been learning Retribution Knight skills for a long. He asked Chen why he deemed it necessary to change his field of operation to that of a Guardian Knight. He answered it quite simply. He was learning both skills because he wanted to have the ability to protect everything that needed to be protected. His father had always taught him that an individual's strength was limited. When facing against the demon race and protecting the homeland, a Guardian Knight's role was far greater than a Retribution Knight's. Asura was highly inspired by his intelligence and far-sightedness. He appreciated him for his cleverness. From then on, Chen was to learn the Guardian skills privately from Asura. He was forbidden to fight against any other knight in the temple without his instructor's permission. Chen didn't seem to be happy with the idea of refraining from fights. Without sufficient battles, his training would be negatively affected. However, Asura didn't lend an ear to his concerns and ordered him to leave for the training ground. As Chen left, Master Nayland suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stood beside Asura. They seemed to be good friends. From their conversation, it seemed as if Nayland had challenged Asura against Chen's extraordinary talent. Now that both of them had witnessed his strength, Nayland said that the Hao Yue branch of the temple would show brilliant results in the near future, as such a capable knight had joined them. Perhaps they would even get a chance to be upgraded to the level of a main temple. Asura's rivals, who considered him a poor instructor, would also get a chance to see how powerful his disciples were. Despite being told about his good fortune in the near future, Asura didn't have any interest in Nayland's discussion. His mind was occupied by Chen's unbelievably high skills at such a young age. He asked Nayland if he knew Chen's innate inner spiritual energy, to which he replied that the boy wasn't vocal about it. All he knew was that his collective spiritual energy was at level 268. Based on that value, his inner spiritual energy must be higher than 40. When he presented his rough guess, Asura's expressions further turned cold and stern. He hated those individuals with high innate inner spiritual energies. Perhaps it could be because he himself wasn't bestowed with a high innate spiritual energy. He wished talents could be exchanged. He was gifted with exceptionally superb qualities of intelligence and comprehension. At the same time, his physical talents were snatched from him. His innate energy was even below 50. If it were any value above 50, then the sealed divine throne would definitely have been under his possession. His inferiority complex could be the reason behind the permanent angry look on his face. Life had not been fair to him. Realizing that Asura's anger was getting out of control, Nayland calmed him down and explained the statistical situation to him. With Chen joining the temple, Asura could get a chance to flaunt his abilities. It meant the same thing if his disciple acquired the status he aspired to. All credit would be attributed to him if his students flourished and succeeded in the future. Asura understood the situation and realized that Chen's success was linked to his success. He thanked Nayland for everything and asked him to help him with a few things. First of all, aside from the night examinations, he wanted to use the temple's training ground privately. Secondly, he instructed Nayland to conceal all the information about Chen, especially his age. They couldn't let the other main temples and the branch temples know about him. Thirdly, he had a very bright idea in his mind. In the demon raiding team selection 2 years ahead, he wanted that kid to shock the world. He had vowed to take Chen to exceptionally high heights of success. Nayland warned him to remain patient with the kid's success, because they couldn't afford to harm him. However, Asura couldn't stay calm at any cost until he made Chen succeed. He knew that little boy wasn't an ordinary child. He was way stronger than any of them could imagine. From his body, he finally saw some hope, which wasn't because of his age or talents, but because of his resolution. Resolution was one of the 10 integral qualities of a knight. Other than resolution, he also possessed the qualities of courage and perseverance. He was a child who would never accept his defeat and possessed superhuman observation and imagination abilities. Though 2.5 years was a short span for his training, Asura believed that he would be able to shock the entire world with just a little grooming. Nayland once again counseled him to remain calm and patient with that matter. It was because he knew where Chen came from. He was aware of his familial background. They couldn't afford any kind of physical harm to him because they would be held questionable for it. His father was a very influential person. Coming from that origin, Chen would become the hope of humanity, even if trained with patience and cautiousness. A tough grind wasn't necessarily required in his case. Asura calmed him down by saying that he cherished and valued that kid even more than him because he was to become a source for the continuation of his dream. From that day onwards, Asura, the head instructor of the Hao Yue branch temple, suddenly stopped teaching and let Nayland personally take over the responsibilities of the head instructor. He disappeared from sight as if he had never been in the temple. Along with him, the short-lived legend of the juvenile knights, Chen, also disappeared. Perhaps they were undergoing some intense training that couldn't be revealed to the world. Asura's other students were obviously extremely happy because there was no one to punish them daily. They came up with all sorts of explanations for his disappearance. Some of them thought Asura might have been fired for abusing a certain lord's young master. Chen was also away from sight, but since they weren't very familiar with him, they didn't note his absence. Sister Shin, however, felt immensely aggrieved by his disappearance. She was the closest to Chen in the whole temple, but still met him rarely. She missed sharing dinner with him. Ever since he had disappeared, her appetite also vanished. She didn't know much about his whereabouts other than the fact that he was receiving Asura's guidance personally. Days passed one by one just like that. There was no information about the two of them. Almost 2 years had passed by when one day on the training ground, a loud banging sound was heard. It was Asura and Chen at their training session. He had smacked Chen in anger for not executing a particular move correctly. He rebuked him for being absent-minded. Ever since their training began, he had been teaching him repeatedly to never directly confront a foe who was greater in energy and strength than him. Perhaps Chen couldn't hold back his attacking stamina because Asura had called him a wimp earlier. The instructor explained that the most important quality of a guardian knight was tolerance. Lack of tolerance was the greatest shortcoming of a guardian knight. In terms of tolerance, Chen's attack was too weak. After the guidance about tolerance, they went on for a second round of the fight, in which Chen directly blocked an attack from Asura. Being able to block the attack despite using divine obstruction meant that his spiritual energy had broken through. Asura ordered him to rest for a while to regain his stamina, after which he said that he would begin testing his spiritual energy. He was given a few minutes of break. As the counted minutes ended, Chen was called over to smash the spiritual energy counter stone. He banged his sword into the stone with all his strength, and its meter reading began rising to show the final results. It kept on increasing for a long time until it finally stopped at 1,014. It was an exceptionally high number. Asura was impressed with his apprentice. Chen had put up a good show, just as he had expected of him. Asura said that his spiritual energy was at the level of 3,000. He had remained at the 5th step of the 5th rank for 6 years. The statistics of spiritual energy were strange. Every time it reached a round number, it was called a bottleneck. The bottleneck of spiritual energy was similar to the bottleneck of breaking through the final rank of each step as a knight. For that reason, it was extremely difficult to cross the round number. Unfortunately, Asura was stuck at the bottleneck of 3,000. For 6 years, he had not been able to surpass that value. No matter how hard he worked or how smart he was, he remained below the bottleneck. He was highly impressed by his students as he had crossed the bottleneck efficiently. However, somewhere between that, happiness was an element of jealousy. He asked Chen if he had been feeling a sense of sluggishness in the past few days while training his spiritual energy, to which he replied that he had not experienced any such thing. Everything was going normal for him. His reply had made Asura's emotions rise as high as the mountains. Nature was unfair to him. That little child turned out to be luckier than him. He didn't seem to be humane, as he didn't feel the bottleneck at all. His spiritual energy was already above 1,000 at the age of 13. If only he could transfer 20% of Chen's energy into himself, he would have become at least a radiant knight. Asura was yelling at the top of his throat with helplessness. His vulnerability was outpouring. However, Chen was used to all that drama. He had been going through it for the past 2 years, but that day was a bit different from the regular days. Asura's passivity was at its peak. He couldn't even look at Chen directly because his mere presence made him recall his own shortcomings. It was becoming unbearable for him, so he ordered Chen to pack his stuff as they were going out of seclusion the next day. They were finally going outside after 2 whole years. Chen was happy that he would be able to visit his elder sister Shin after so many days. He quickly packed his stuff and went to sleep early. As the next morning dawned, there was a strange kind of excitement in the early morning wind. Chen and Asura headed towards the exit of the training ground with their bags packed. Chen asked his teacher where they were heading to. The reply that Asura gave him was highly unexpected. Chen wasn't prepared for it at all. They were going to the Knight's Sacred Mountain. Chen jumped in excitement all of a sudden. They were going to get a mount. It was the best and the most awaited morning. Finally, that day had dawned, of which he had been dreaming for a long. All the knights dreamt of having a powerful mount as a companion, but that wish was fulfilled for only a few. To a knight, a powerful mount itself represented glory and strength. Chen wasn't exempted from that dream too. Ever since he had decided to become a great knight, he frequently visualized his majestic appearance on his mount. Especially after seeing Shin's rose unicorn, he yearned for his future mount even more. When Asura broke the news that they were going to the Knight's Sacred Mountain, he wondered what kind of mount he would get. Would it be the #1 mount, the Starlight Unicorn, which every knight wanted to have? Would it be the beautiful and glowing Cloudhawk? He just couldn't wait for the journey to the mountain to end so that he would unite with his mount. He was finally going to have a mount that would officially belong to him. As they exited their secluded place, Asura summoned his mount to begin the journey. His mount was the vibrant mountain bird, the 6th rank earth element flying magical beast. The moment it arrived, its colossal wings caused storms of dust to flow around. Chen was taken aback by its high strength. It was an excellent companion. He was kind of envious of his teacher's good luck, but his teacher told him that he would have the same opportunity too. For the time being, they talked about the areas of concern while searching for a magical beast companion in the Knight's Sacred Mountain. The Sacred Mountain was a magical land that their sacred knight temple's ancestors created. It was originally a huge magical array. As long as it was within the sacred mountain range, no matter what rank the magical beast was of, it would become friendly to humans. In that land, the longer the beast had lived, the better it was able to communicate mentally. As a person approved by the Sacred Temple Alliance, they would naturally be close to him. Asura guided Chen that at that place, He had to keep in mind that he was searching for a companion to be with him for the rest of his life. That companion wouldn't simply be a mount, it would be his most loyal friend. It would follow him like his shadow unless he died. After entering the mountain, the process of searching for the fated chance would be initiated. Only by the arrival of the fated chance could the knight meet his companion. Otherwise, he might be there for tens or hundreds of years, yet no beast would be willing to pay attention to him. Asura's words were getting complicated. Chen was finding it hard to keep pace with him, so he asked his instructor how one could find his fated chance. He elucidated that every knight had a different fate. The year Asura had met with his vibrant bird, it was only a foot tall. At that time, it naturally flew and landed on his shoulder. Ever since then, it had accompanied him for more than 30 years. His fate had been kind to him in that matter. However, not everyone's fate was similar. Sometimes people don't find their companions for ages. After entering the sacred mountain, anything that was bound to happen would happen. The fate that had been written would definitely be met. The discussion took a strange turn all of a sudden when Asura mentioned the ill side of his fate. He told Chen that his innate spiritual energy was only 9. Chen was taken aback. He thought it was mistaken. How could it be so low? Asura complained that it was all because of his poor fate. He was bestowed with the highest capacity of intelligence, but his talent was near 0. Because of his limited talent, he wouldn't be able to cross the airborne knight stage, even if he had racked his brain completely and thought of numerous training methods. He was highly pessimistic that he wouldn't be able to reach any higher ranks throughout his life. As the conversation grew deeper, he opened up his historic tales one by one. Asura had been qualified as a knight at the age of 12. Back then, he was very ambitious and was acclaimed to be a genius by everyone. However, the instant his sacred awakening was completed, the whole illusionary palace crackled into pieces. Everything was burnt down to ashes. All the high hopes associated with him were destroyed. An innate inner spiritual energy of 9 was trash amongst all the trash. The circumstances were devastating for him. Nobody held any hopes towards him. The teachers that valued him earlier were not willing to even accept him as their apprentice. He wasn't even told where the knight's sacred mountain was. At that time, he was only 15. How could a 15-year-old child deal with such a huge trauma of social unacceptance? He refused to go with the flow of the situation. He was strong enough to stand up for himself. He did not believe that a low, innate inner spiritual energy would prevent him from becoming a powerful knight. He perceived that as long as he remained steadfast and worked hard, no power in the world could stop him from breaking through his limitations and charging past the restrictions from heaven. Because not a single person in the world was ready to support him in such dire circumstances, he relied on himself and traveled to the sacred knight temple. After achieving that milestone, he relied on his own legs and walked up to the knight's sacred mountain. During his stay at the magical land, he desperately searched for his companion. He himself used to communicate with any magical beast he encountered. Even if it was the weakest and tiniest beast, he used to try his luck. However, the weakest of the weak creatures were also unwilling to accept him, just as his fellow humans had left him desolated. Just like that, a whole month had passed by in the search of a companion. As the number of days of his stay at the mountain increased, he was being compelled to leave. When he couldn't endure the unfairness of nature, he sat down on the ground and cried his heart out. He screamed and wailed at the top of his throat. His shrieks were loud enough to be heard at the heavens. That was when his companion heard him. The vibrant bird descended from the skies and landed on his shoulder. The way it gazed into his eyes, it appeared as if it could understand and feel his pain. Since then, it had become his closest relative and companion. Asura also reciprocated his emotions with love and care. He was willing to give his life for his companion because it had been with him through thick and thin. While he narrated his heart-wrenching story, tears rolled down his cheeks. Chen's eyes also sparkled with tears of pity. His master had lived such a sorrowful childhood. The coldness in his attitude was justified. The world had been so merciless towards him. He was just reciprocating their behavior with his sternness. Asura revealed that he was an orphan. He had never witnessed true familial love before. His past version didn't believe in such an unreal and lofty thing as fate until he met his mount. He finally understood familial love after spending time with his companion. For once in his life, fate had been kind to him. The bird encouraged him to flourish through the tough tests of life. It motivated him to train through various methods to achieve his goal. By virtue of its unconditional love and support, he was able to break through gradually from a trash level to the level of an airborne knight. During that time, he experienced various bottlenecks, the final one being the 3,000th level of his spiritual energy. The torment that he had gone through could never be understood by someone as talented as Chen. Chen was such a gifted kid whose fate had supported him in every aspect of life. After speaking his heart out, Asura had just one more thing left to say. He wanted to advise Chen to treat his companion nicely, just like his own family member. Fate gave only one chance to everyone. It was up to him now to make use of that single chance. Suppose he failed to protect his companion well. In that case, he might regret it forever, as it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get a mount.
Don't forget to like and comment for the next part. Join our Discord for the name of the book and subscribe for more videos from us.